Chapter 792. Retribution. Yijin narrowed his eyes and walked to Yi Ningen step by step. A person like you dares to talk about retribution in front of me. Let me tell you, if there is retribution in this world, it will only happen to you and your mother. Her expression was cold and her gaze sharp. For a moment, Yi Ningen's momentum was actually seized by her. Yi Ningen's fear only lasted for a moment. She quickly regained her composure and said, "Don't be complacent. Do you think you can sit in the position of chairman? In your dreams. I'm telling you, you won't get away with this. You can't compare to Daddy at all. Just wait to be pulled down by others. Alright, we can give it a try. Am I going to be pulled down, or am I going to sit firmly in this position and watch your father, you and your mother lose everything? Who doesn't know how to talk tough?" Yijin didn't think that he would lose if he talked tough. Yi Ningen's chest heaved violently. She looked at the arrogance on Yijin's face and felt very angry. Lose everything? Who do you think you are? Why? Because I'm the chairman of Jianghui Company. The security guards came up at this time. Yijin waved his hand, and two security guards stepped forward to take Yi Ningen downstairs. Yi Ningen kept struggling and refused to admit defeat like this. "Yijin, you bitch. You will die a horrible death. What right do you have to chase me away? Let me tell you, I also have a share in the company. I'm also Dad's daughter." The two security guards wanted to drag Yi Ningen again, but Yijin stopped them at this time. She walked in front of Yi Ningen. Her incomparably beautiful face was filled with coldness at this moment. She just stared at Yi Ningen with a cold gaze. "What did you say?" Yi Ningen looked at her as if she had suddenly found her weakness. She sneered, "What? Are you afraid?" "Afraid? Why should I be afraid?" "Because I'm also Dad's daughter. I'm telling you. Because I'm also Dad's daughter, I naturally have half of the company's assets." Yijin didn't speak. She looked at Yi Ningen with a dangerous look. "Are you my father's daughter?" "Yes." "Can't I?" Yi Ningen seemed to have finally made a comeback. She smiled quite proudly. "Let me tell you, Yijin, why are you still yelling here? Be careful, or I'll get a lawyer. If that happens, you won't even be able to keep the shares you have now." She suddenly exclaimed with a smug look on her face, "Speaking of which, you'll lose your shares sooner or later. After all, your shares were obtained through improper means." The smugness in her eyes was really dazzling. Yijin sneered and took a step forward. She got close to Yi Ningen's ear and spoke in a voice that only the two of them could hear. "You want to be my father's daughter? Your mother used to be a prostitute on West Street. Who knows how many men she slept with? You don't even know which man's bastard you are. Do you really think you're the daughter of Yi family just because you followed your mother into Yi family? Ridiculous." Yijin's words made Yi Ningen feel like a golden pheasant who had been stabbed in the foot. She suddenly flared up, screaming and rushing to Yijin. Yijin waved his hand and looked at the two security guards, who quickly took Yi Ningen away. And along the way, Yi Ningen was screaming and struggling. It was not until her voice disappeared in the elevator that the chairman's office was completely quiet. Zhao Li had been looking at Yijin. Now it was quiet. She stepped forward and said, "Do you want me to go downstairs and make her stop talking?" "No need." Yijin had never put Yi Ningen in her eyes, but she had never known what she had just said. But what if what Yi Ningen said was true? Was she really Yi Nanshan's daughter? Yijin soon realized that some things might never be as she thought. After thinking about it, she took out her mobile phone and made 2 calls. After putting down the phone, Yijin fell into deep thought. Could Yi Ningen really be Yi Nanshan's daughter? Yi Ningen was only 1 year younger than her. If what she said was true, it meant that Yi Nanshan had betrayed his mother a long time ago. Thinking of the possible cause of Lu Hui's death and Yi Nanshan's betrayal, Yizhen really felt sorry for Lu Hui. Yizhen didn't have much time to think about this matter. The first manager's meeting after she took office was about to begin. This was her first battle in the company. No matter what, she couldn't lose this battle. She called Chu Tai to be the recorder and brought Zhao Li into the meeting room as a special assistant. She didn't know if Chu Tai's threat just now worked. There were a lot of people in the meeting room, and it was full. In addition to the managers, many deputy managers were also here. When everyone was here, Yizhen could also carry out her plan. Today, I called you here only to say one thing. From today on, I will be the chairman of the company. I will lead everyone to bring the company to a new height. Before that, I hope you can be loyal to the company. You work for the salary, and you want to get more. Only when the company is good will you be good. However, if anyone has disloyalty, betrays the company, or does something wrong to the company, then don't blame me for not being polite. A few simple words, using both the carrot and the stick, also showed her attitude. Those who could sit here weren't stupid, so they naturally understood what she meant. However, many people were still in a wait-and-see state. Yizhen knew that, so she had to completely win the hearts of the company before Yi Nanshan seized the opportunity to make a comeback. Yizhen began to become busy. Previously, she had made a few phone calls, causing everyone to be unwilling to cooperate with the shogi company. Now that Yizhen made a call, she first brought up the cooperation case with Ninghai Company. President Ning had been waiting for this moment, so he would naturally give Yizhen face. With President Ning as the start, the previous partners all resumed their cooperation with the shogi company. Yizhen became very busy all the time. She had just taken over the company. In order to not give Yi Nanshan an excuse to pick on her, she could only work harder. Li Junxing had been very busy recently. There was a working group from above to inspect, and he was also in charge of several projects that were related to the people's livelihood in the city. He was busy, and so was Yizhen. After Li Junxing was done with his work for the past few days, it was Friday. He finally had some free time. He suddenly remembered that he and Yizhen had been leaving early and returning late. Li Junxing frowned. When he was about to go home, he asked the driver to drive to Yizhen's company. Yizhen had just taken over as the chairman a few days ago, so she was very busy. When she received Li Junxing's call, she hadn't reacted yet. Uncle Li. Yes. I'm downstairs at your company. Come down. Yizhen looked at the time. It was already past the time to get off work. It was just that she had been like this during this period of time. Every day, she worked overtime until very late. Sometimes, when it was too late, she would choose to sleep in the small lounge attached to the company. I still have documents in my hands that I haven't finished reading. Shenzhen. Li Junxing suddenly turned serious and called her name in a very gentle voice. If you don't come down, I can only go up to look for you. He had such a beautiful voice, but he had to say such threatening words. Yizhen looked at the time and thought about how she had been reading documents day and night these past few days. She had been looking at the previous data and the information of those customers who weren't working with her. Okay, wait a moment. I'll come down right away. When Yizhen went downstairs, she looked around to make sure that no one had noticed her before getting into the car. This action naturally aroused Li Junxing's dissatisfaction. As soon as she got into the car, he brought her body into his arms. What? Am I that shameful? No, I didn't mean that. You didn't mean that. You're acting like a thief. I really didn't. Yizhen shook her head and tried to change the topic. By the way, what are we eating tonight? Don't change the topic. Li Junxing wouldn't be fooled by her. It doesn't matter what we eat tonight. But tell me first, what did you do wrong these past few days? Me? Did I do something wrong? Yijin didn't understand. She thought about it seriously, but she couldn't figure it out. In the end, she shook her head. I don't know. As soon as she finished speaking, Li Junxing bit her lips gently. It wasn't heavy, but it was a little painful. Yijin bit her lips. You can't figure it out. Li Junxing pretended to continue biting her. Then I'll have to come again. Yijin was bitten again, and her eyes were a little red. Uncle Li, with her like this, how could Li Junxing bear to make things difficult for her? You. He hugged her waist tightly and rested his chin on the top of her hair. I know you just took over the company. There are many things. But first, don't be too tired. Second, I want you to know that I'm your man. Shouldn't you give me more care? Yijin blinked. For a moment, she almost thought that there was something wrong with her ears. Uncle Li, so, was he complaining that she didn't spend more time with him? If you keep looking at me like this, I won't care where this is and will do you directly. Uncle Li, Yijin was afraid that he would really do something rash, so she took a big step back. However, Li Junxing pulled her back into his arms. He looked at her with a faint smile. What do you want to eat? Everything is fine. Yijin nodded. Just as she was about to say whatever, her phone rang. She looked at Ling Xian's number displayed on it and hurriedly picked up the phone. Xian. Jinjin, I've helped you find out what you wanted me to find out. Ling Xian's voice was a little solemn. Where are you now? I'll come to find you. Yijin looked at Li Junxing, who was sitting next to her, and shook her head. Where are you? I'll come to find you. Okay, I'm still at the company. I'll wait for you. Okay. After hanging up the phone, Yijin looked at Li Junxing. Uncle Li, I'm afraid I can't have dinner with you today. Li Junxing didn't say anything and just stared at her face. Yijin was a little embarrassed. She didn't intend to let people know about their relationship so soon. Especially relatives and friends. Uncle Li, I'll get out of the car first. Before she could move, her waist was already in Li Junxing's arms again. He looked down at her fair face, and his voice was soft but firm. Are you going to see your friend now? Yes. I'll go with you. Uncle Li, Yijin bit her lip, and there was a hint of difficulty in her eyes. Li Junxing suddenly narrowed his eyes. He looked at Yijin and suddenly realized something. Chapter 793. Yijin didn't say anything. She looked at Li Junxing and felt that he would be angry. Her lips moved. For the first time, she didn't dare to look into Li Junxing's eyes. Uncle Li, my friend is looking for me for something very important and private, so, very private. Li Junxing heard a sentence just now. She said that the matter you asked her to investigate has come to light. What did you ask her to investigate for you? What do you have that you can't let me know? He thought that she had no secrets about what had happened before she passed by in front of him. Uncle Li, or, in your heart, you don't treat me as your boyfriend at all. I don't. Yijin didn't know what else she could say. It wasn't that she felt that Li Junxing was shameful, but Ling Xian knew that the person that night was Li Junxing. Now, she suddenly wanted to bring Li Junxing to Ling Xian. Since you don't, I'll go with you. Uncle Li. Address. For the first time, Yijin knew that Li Junxing could have such a strong side when he was stubborn. Her lips moved. She didn't want to say the address. Li Junxing asked Xiao Zhao to stop the car and pull over to the side of the road. Li Junxing just looked at her face. Address? Uncle Li. I'm just going. I'll be back soon. Yijin. Li Junxing looked at the troubled expression on her face. Either I go with you today, or you don't have to go today. This was a multiple-choice question. Yijin sat motionless. The atmosphere in the car was a little stiff. Li Junxing didn't have to go, but Yijin's attitude made him a little uncomfortable. During this period of time, he had become patient and went first. However, he didn't understand why Yijin was always afraid to appear in front of others with him. Was he really that shameful? Yijin bit her lip. Before she could think about it, Li Junxing suddenly sighed. Forget it. Making things difficult for you is making things difficult for myself. What's the point? Get out of the car. As he spoke, he glanced outside. Zhao Li has already driven the car over. Let her send you there. His attitude changed so quickly that even Yijin was surprised. Uncle Li, Li Junxing held her waist and kissed her on the lips. He said in a helpless and doting tone, "You've already called me uncle. How can I argue with a niece like you?" Yijin's face suddenly turned red. She lowered her head in embarrassment. When he said the word niece, she couldn't help but think of the times when they were intimate. He also liked to play this kind of prank. "My dear niece, are you happy that uncle is doing this? Don't you like to call me uncle? If you call me a few more times, I'll have more energy to feed you." Blushing, Yijin realized that he could still think like this at this time. Go. She knew that he was more than 10 years older than she was, so his behavior was naturally much more mature than hers. In the few months that they had been together, he had often been like this, going along with her and taking care of her. No matter what she did, he never seemed to get angry. Was this the difference between a mature man and her? Yijin bit her lip and suddenly said as if she was going all out, "Actually, it's not impossible. If Uncle Li wants to go, then let's go together." Li Junxing looked at her with a gentle gaze. "Don't force yourself. You know, I never like to force you." "I'm not forcing you." She was just not used to it. She had a good relationship with Ling Xian, like sisters. There was nothing wrong with bringing Li Junxing to her. Li Junxing looked like he was considerate of her. "Really don't force yourself. I can give you time until you're willing to introduce me to others." Li Junxing let go of her with a magnanimous expression, but there was also a hint of disappointment hidden in his magnanimity. Since it was an equal relationship, it was naturally sincere for sincerity. He was honest with her. He took her to see his parents and friends. But if she still held back from him, it would be too much. Yijin blamed herself more and more. Ever since they met, it seemed that he had always given in for her and thought more. "It's okay. I really won't force myself." As if afraid that he wouldn't believe her, she took the initiative to hug his waist as she spoke. She told him the address. Li Junxing hugged her with his hands. At an angle that she couldn't see, the corners of his lips curled up slightly. How could there be disappointment in his eyes? There was only joy. He lowered his head and kissed the top of the little girl's hair. It was better to put such an innocent little girl in his arms and protect her well. Ling Xian was shocked when she saw Li Junxing appear with Yijin. Especially when she saw Li Junxing's face in the surveillance camera, she was even more shocked. She couldn't help but look at Yijin. Xian, let me introduce you. This is my boyfriend. Li Junxing. Uncle Li, this is my good friend, Ling Xian. Hello. Li Junxing was the first to reach out and greet Ling Xian. Ling Xian looked at his face and couldn't come back to her senses for a long time. Finally, her gaze fell on Yijin's face. What did you call him? Before Yijin could think of how to answer, Li Junxing answered on her behalf very considerately, the title isn't important. This is just a little fun between us as a couple. The words, a little fun between a couple, almost made Yijin choke on her saliva. She couldn't help but turn to look at Li Junxing. How could he say such nonsense? It wasn't like that at all. The awkwardness on her side hadn't subsided yet. Ling Xian seemed to have just reacted and let out a loud, "Aw." Yizhen and Li Junxing were shocked by her cry at the same time. Li Junxing. Ling Xian came from the Ling family, so she naturally couldn't be stupid. She almost immediately realized the other party's identity. "Are you that Li Junxing?" "Yes." Li Junxing smiled. "If there are no accidents, I'm probably the only Li Junxing in Qing City." Oh my god. Ling Xian couldn't help but stare at Yizhen again. Did she have to be so lucky? She casually slept with a man, and she slept with a mayor. The corners of Yizhen's mouth twitched, and her smile was a little bitter. There were some things that she really didn't know how to say. Xian, didn't you say that you have some clues about the matter I asked you to investigate?" Ling Xian restrained her expression because of her words and suddenly became serious. "Yes. I found something, and I can show it to you." Yizhen and Li Junxing walked to the sofa beside her office and sat down. Ling Xian handed the information in her hand to her. Yizhen took it and opened the information. She wasn't in a hurry to read it. Instead, she turned around and glanced at Li Junxing. His expression was a little too calm. Thinking of what he said just now, Yizhen didn't want to hide it from him anymore. She directly took out the information and started reading. With this, she realized that things were really interesting. Speaking of which, Yi Nanshan was not wrongly accused by his grandfather of being a poor boy from the countryside. He wasn't born in the countryside, but he was similar to the countryside. He came from a small county in Z province. Ever since he was young, his grades had been considered outstanding. Yi Nanshan had been conceited since he was young, not only because of his good grades, but also because he was good-looking. Without a good appearance, how could he have attracted Lu Hui's attention back then? Later, he came to Qing City to study and entered Qing City University. There, he met Lu Hui. If it was just a simple acquaintance, there would naturally be no problem. However, Yi Nanshan and Lu Hui's acquaintance was probably premeditated. Yi Nanshan knew a girl from next door in his hometown. That girl was none other than Chen Wan. When Yi Nanshan was with Lu Hui, he wasn't with Chen Wan. However, he could guess what happened later. He took a fancy to the benefits that Lu Hui represented and what kind of benefits would be produced by marrying Lu Hui. His good looks had successfully attracted Lu Hui's attention. In this way, he and Lu Hui's relationship would be smooth sailing. After getting together with Lu Hui, Yi Nanshan would pretend at first, but later, he wasn't even willing to pretend anymore. In front of Lu Hui and the Lu family, he was naturally a good gentleman. However, in a place where Lu Hui and the Lu family couldn't see, he picked up Chen Wan. Not only did he pick her up, but he also found her a house alone for her to live in. Yi Nanshan was in love with Lu Hui, but at the same time, he was with Chen Wan. Later, he and Lu Hui were going to get married. For some reason, Chen Wan didn't want to stay and wanted to leave. Because of this, the two of them separated for a period of time. Later, when Yi Nanshan and Lu Hui were officially married for less than 3 years, Chen Wan came to Yi Nanshan again. The two of them didn't know what was going on, but naturally, they rolled together again. This time, it wasn't just once or twice. Yi Nanshan's moves were not new. He helped Chen Wan settle down. To prevent Lu Hui from finding out, he arranged for Chen Wan to stay far away from the Lu family's villa on the other side of the city. In this way, even if he had to spend half a day to see Chen Wan, he was willing. After all, only by being far away would he not be found out. Later, Lu Hui got pregnant and had Yijin. When she first got pregnant, because Lu Hui's pregnancy wasn't good, the Lu family was very concerned. Yi Nanshan was afraid of being found out, so he didn't dare to act rashly. Therefore, he rarely went to see Qinwan. Instead, he began to focus all his attention on Lu Hui. That was the time when he and Lu Hui were at their best. However, it was also at that time that Qinwan found out she was pregnant. She was scared and desperately called him, asking him to appear. Therefore, there was what happened later. Yi Nanshan couldn't let Qinwan abort the child. Therefore, while comforting Qinwan, he also had to prevent Lu Hui from finding out. Fortunately, because of Yijin's birth, Qinwan focused all her attention on the child. Because Yi Nanshan had a chance to breathe, he asked Qinwan to give birth to the child. Qinwan didn't know what to think, but she finally agreed. Then, she gave birth to Yi Ningen. However, no one knew what happened after that. Qinwan left Yi Nanshan alone. Yi Nanshan looked for her for a long time. The reason why she left was not shown, so Yijin had no way of knowing. Chapter 794. Yijin looked at the information and forced herself to continue reading. Qinwan was kept by Yi Nanshan and later gave birth to a daughter, Yi Ningen. Looking at Yi Ningen's birth date that was less than half a year apart from hers, Yijin felt extremely mocked. She really pitied Lu Hui, really pitiful. Now it seemed that Yi Nanshan didn't have any true feelings for Lu Hui. He was clearly using her from the beginning to the end. He came from an ordinary background and got resources. He used Lu Hui to get promoted and get resources. He opened a company and improved his status. Hate, really hate. Yijin gritted his teeth and endured the hatred in his heart as he continued reading. She didn't know what happened in the meantime, but for a period of time, Yi Nanshan stopped contacting Qinwan. Maybe it was because he was afraid of being discovered by Lu Hui, or maybe it was for other reasons. Yijin looked at the information and realized that there was a period of time when Yi Nanshan was running for Qingqing's top 10 entrepreneurs. No wonder. Yijin thought of Lu Hui and felt a burst of heartache. Mom, you gave up everything for this man. You thought you got true love, but you didn't know that the other party was using you from the beginning to the end. He was deceiving you. There was no sincerity at all. But you hurt your heart and even lost your life for such a man. Yijin clenched the thin pieces of paper and felt a pain in her heart. Her palms suddenly warmed up. Her hand was held by someone. She turned her face and found that Li Junxing was holding her hand. The way he looked at her was very gentle. Yijin's heart warmed and she had an inexplicable urge to cry. She originally only had a few doubts, but now because of this information, her doubts rose to 10. If Yi Nanshan's feelings were fake from the beginning, then could he be a suspect in Lu Hui's death? The paper in her hand was taken away by Li Junxing, and he finished reading the rest of the investigation. He looked up and met Ling Xian's gaze. This is the information you investigated? Yes. Ling Xian felt a little pressured now. She didn't expect Yijin to find such a powerful man. He was actually the new mayor of Qingqing. Li Junxing nodded. Do you have a backup? Ha. Yes. Send a copy to my email. After Li Junxing said that, he picked up a pen and paper and wrote down the email address. Yijin didn't know what he was going to do, but Ling Xian obediently sent the backup investigation information to Li Junxing. Li Junxing took out his phone to receive it and forwarded it. At the same time, he sent a message. Putting down his phone, he met the sadness in Yijin's eyes and squeezed her hand. All right, don't think too much. Leave the rest to me. Yijin fell silent. Leave it to him. What could he do? Lu Hui was no longer there. She was dead, and no matter what they did, she would never come back to life. Believe me, I will definitely seek justice for your mother. Yizhen looked at Li Junxing. There was sadness in her eyes, but now was not the time for her to be sad. She really had a lot of things to do. Ling Xian did not speak. This was the first time she had seen her friend like this. Are these two serious? Yizhen thanked Ling Xian and left. She got into Li Junxing's car again. Her mood was still very low. What do you want to eat tonight? Li Junxing squeezed her palm and pulled her into his arms. He really didn't like to see the little girl so depressed. She should smile more. Her facial features were bright, but she didn't smile much. Yizhen shook her head and said, whatever. Why is it always whatever? Li Junxing kissed her lips gently. Why don't we eat hot pot? It's starting to get a little cold. Hot pot is the best. Okay. Yizhen wasn't very interested. What she wanted to do the most now was to find out the cause of Lu Hui's death and avenge Lu Hui. Only then could she be worthy of Lu Hui's spirit in heaven. Shenzhen. Yes. Don't think too much. Li Junxing kissed her lips gently and made her look at him. Everything will work out when it comes to it. You have to believe me. Yizhen nodded. At this time, Li Junxing was like a driftwood to her. Other than trusting him, she didn't know what else she could do. On one end, Yizhen was still waiting for the results of Li Junxing's investigation. On the other end, Yi Nanshan's lawyer came to the door again. He wanted Yizhen to hand over the shares, saying that he had doubts about the will. She wasn't qualified to inherit Lu Hui's shares. Yizhen ignored him, but lawyer Ding said that if she didn't come out to solve the problem, it would be up to the judge to decide how to award the shares and who to award them to. Whatever. Yizhen put down the document in her hand. After learning that her mother's matter might be related to Yi Nanshan, the little bit of father-daughter affection she had for Yi Nanshan disappeared without a trace. You can go and sue, or you can let the court decide, but please also tell Yi Nanshan. The heavenly Tao is clear, and retribution is not good. I'm waiting to see the retribution of their family of 4. Lawyer Ding failed to communicate with Yizhen, so he had to leave first. However, before Yizhen was about to go home that day, she was blocked by Yi Ningen. She didn't enter the company, but blocked the company's parking lot, next to her car. Speaking of which, Yi Ningen used to work in the company. However, the first thing Yizhen did after becoming the chairman was to fire Yi Ningen. It didn't make sense that she couldn't even be the planning team leader before, but Yi Ningen still had a position in the company. Yizhen and Zhao Li were about to walk to their cars when Yi Ningen appeared. Yizhen, don't go too far. I'm warning you, if you don't want to embarrass yourself, hand over the shares and return the company to Dad. Otherwise, you'll suffer. What a joke. Yizhen looked at this person and really didn't know who Yi Ningen looked like. Without Yi Nanshan and Qin Wan scheming, even her IQ wasn't online. I don't know how I'll lose face holding my own things. Yi Ningen had a look of disdain. What? Have you forgotten what you said today? You asked Dad to sue you. Don't you want to go to court with Dad? I don't understand. What good will it do you if you go to court? I don't believe that Li Junxing's family will allow a disobedient and unfilial person to go to court with her own father. Whether they will or not is the Li family's business. It has nothing to do with you. If you have the time, why don't you go back and accompany Yi Nanshan? Enjoy your rare leisure time. Yizhen, you're really the most shameless person I've ever seen. You don't even call me Dad. I'll definitely tell Dad about this. Tell Dad. Whatever. She didn't care at all. Yizhen didn't want to argue with Yi Ningen. That was boring at all. He walked past Yi Ningen and was about to leave when he saw Yi Ningen suddenly smile. Okay, Yi Zhen, if you don't give the shares to Dad and don't let him be the chairman of the company again. Just you wait. I want to see. Will you still be able to smile in a few days? Her smile was strange, and her words were even more strange. Yi Zhen didn't want to pay attention to her. He got into the car, but he couldn't help but start to think about the meaning of Yi Ningen's words. What did they prepare? Yi Zhen soon found out, because Yi Nanshan really did sue her. Yi Nanshan submitted a petition to the Qing City Court, saying that when Lu Hui died, she was unconscious, so the will didn't count. Not only that, Yi Nanshan even took out a new will. The date of the will was before the later will. The content of this will said that Lu Hui knew that she didn't have much time left, so she gave all the shares in her hands to Yi Nanshan to inherit. And Yi Zhen only had some real estate and funds under his name. As soon as this will was written, Yi Zhen received a subpoena from the court. When Li Junxing returned home, he saw the subpoena on the coffee table. Yi Zhen sat on the sofa, a little lost in thought. Picking up the subpoena and glancing at it, Li Junxing sat down beside Yi Zhen and patted the back of her hand. Don't worry. There's already some progress in the matter you asked someone to investigate. It's just a few days. I'll get someone to investigate as soon as possible. Really? What did you find out? A nanny who worked in the Yi family back then. She said that she once saw the chef working in the kitchen put something in your mother's tea. Really? Yi Zhen suddenly became excited. She looked at Li Junxing with an anxious expression. Where's that chef? Did you find him? Not yet. Li Junxing looked at Yi Zhen, not wanting to disappoint her. But don't worry. I've already sent someone to look for him. It just needs time. Yi Zhen's expression was a little depressed. She looked at Li Junxing. It's been so long. How did that nanny know? Also, who's that nanny? The nanny's surname is Wang. How did he know? It's because I asked someone to investigate all the people who worked in the Yi family over the years. Because your mother was in charge of the Yi family back then, your mother managed the family very well, but the servant salaries were all paid by the housekeeper, so the nanny couldn't remember how many people there were back then. However, the chef usually had a good relationship with her, so she remembered. According to the records, she found the nanny who worked in the Yi family back then. The nanny didn't know that after so many years, there were still people investigating what happened back then, so when she found out that the chef had put something in Lu Hui's tea, she asked. In the end, the chef said that she had seen wrongly. Because she had a good relationship with the chef, she believed the other party's explanation. Now, Li Junxing had already asked for the chef's name, but the country was so big. It was a little difficult to find someone who only had a name. Fortunately, we already have a direction. Xinjin, don't worry. There should be a response in a few days. Yi Zhen nodded. She knew that it had been too long. It would be difficult to find all the evidence in a short time. But this was already very good news. At least this proved that her mother's death was really not because of stomach cancer, but because of someone else. Then what about this? Chapter 795. If she really had to return the shares to Yi Nanshan, she would definitely vomit to death. When Yi Zhen thought of this, she felt uncomfortable. There's no need. Li Junxing smiled and pinched her palm. Don't worry. I have a way. The will in his hands can't be real. I also believe it's not real, but I'm afraid that there's a chance. Even if it's real, as long as you feel suspicious, you can refuse to execute it. The transfer of shares requires the signature of the person in question. If you don't agree, it's useless even if he has the will. But, no buts. Li Junxing didn't want her to worry too much. Do you know? Now that the shares are under your name, even if the court rules that the will is invalid after the hearing, it won't be able to enforce it. Even if it is, it can be delayed for a long time before it is implemented. And before that, I believe I've found the evidence. There were many people with the same name in the country, but it wasn't difficult to find a chef. Thank you, Uncle Li. She had asked Ling Xian to investigate for so long without any results, but Li Junxing had made such an important progress. Li Junxing put the subpoena aside and looked at the gratitude in Yizhen's eyes. He reached out and pinched her palm. Your gratitude isn't very sincere. His fingertips gently brushed past her palm, and she felt an itch. She wanted to take her hand back, but he wrapped his entire body in his arms. His hand slowly slid down her back. These two simple actions caused Yizhen's legs to go weak. Uncle Li, if you really want to thank me, why don't you call me hubby? There was a warm touch on her lips. He kissed her lips, bit by bit. He traced the shape of her lips. His low voice was filled with endless sexiness. Be good, call me that. Yizhen's face turned slightly red. Looking at the teasing look in Li Junxing's eyes, she suddenly raised her hand and hooked it around his neck. Her red lips were slightly seductive. She half bit her lips and leaned close to his ear. Her fragrant breath, accompanied by her hot breath, brushed past his ear. Hubby, thank you. Li Junxing felt his throat tighten and pulled Yizhen's body into his arms. Say it again. Hubby. Yizhen pressed her forehead against his, and her slender fingertips gently stroked his lips. Thank you. How about this thank you gift? He lowered his head and kissed her lips forcefully. You're really a demon. You asked for it. Yizhen lost his strength, his body like dough. He had pinched her here and there, and she was no longer the same as before. Yizhen signed the document and handed it to Chu Te. Over the past few days, she had observed the people in the chairman's office. Yi Nanshan's former assistant was Yi Nanshan's man, and he didn't trust her. That day, the assistant didn't come to the meeting. Yizhen wasn't interested in asking what the assistant was doing. He directly asked someone to give him his salary and then let him go. On the other hand, Chu Te and the other secretaries in the secretary's office followed her wholeheartedly. Their relationship was pretty good. It was also because of Chu Te's help these past few days that her work had progressed very smoothly. Of course, Yizhen wasn't afraid even if one or two of them had evil thoughts. It would take time to subdue Yi Nanshan's former subordinates. What she had now was time. In the past few days, Yi Nanshan didn't appear even once. Not only Yi Nanshan, but Chen Wan and Yi Ningen also didn't enter the company again. Yizhen couldn't figure out what they wanted to do with this almost laissez-faire state. She suspected that Yi Nanshan had a backup plan waiting for her, but she wasn't afraid. Soon, it was the day before the trial. Yizhen returned home early and looked at Ling Xian and the information that Li Junxing had prepared for her. In fact, the information was very one-sided. Just like how Yi Nanshan had provided that Lu Hui was mentally ill back then, the information couldn't be used as evidence. She just hoped that it would be helpful when she went to court. After reading all the information, Yizhen's heart wasn't at ease. She wanted to drink, but she was afraid that if she got drunk, she wouldn't be able to go to court tomorrow. She could only walk back and forth in the living room. When Li Junxing returned home, he saw Yizhen like this. What's wrong? Nothing. Yizhen saw that he had returned and turned to walk towards him. Why are you back so early today? During this period of time, she knew that there were a few big moves in the city. Li Junxing was very busy. However, no matter how busy he would try his best to go home early at night. Unless it was a special occasion or a meeting that he couldn't postpone, he would always come back to have dinner with her. Li Junxing didn't answer her question. He looked at the information on the coffee table. Are you very nervous? Yes. Do you need me to greet you and Director Sun? Director Sun was the director of the Qing City Court. Ever since Yizhen got involved in this lawsuit, Li Junxing hadn't looked for him. No. Yizhen looked at Li Junxing with an unusually serious expression. Uncle Li, don't look for Director Sun, and don't look for anyone related to your profession. She was not an ignorant little girl. She knew when to stop. Uncle Li, don't let it affect your work. She gently stroked his front lapel. She was very grateful that he had such intentions, but there were many things. Not only did she want to rely on herself, but she also didn't want to cause trouble for him. I know people. I'm on the rise of my career. Uncle Li, I don't want to make things difficult for you because of me. Even if it would have a slight impact. The seriousness in Yizhen's eyes moved Li Junxing a little. It's not difficult. It's just a phone call. No need. Yizhen shook her head with a firm expression. I want to win against him fair and square. She said it very easily. It was hard to hide the nervousness in her eyes. Li Junxing's heart ached a little. There was no need for her to experience these things. He lowered his head and kissed her lips gently. It wasn't appropriate to accompany her to court. After all, he was too big a target. However, it was okay to use his way to make her less nervous. Sure enough, after being kissed and hugged by him, the nervousness in Yizhen's heart dissipated a lot. Uncle Li, she gave him a warm response and let herself indulge in this almost indulgent happiness. As for other troubles, she would think about them later. Yi Nanshan sat in the plaintiff's seat. Yi Ningen and Qin Wan, who were in the audience, attended with him. Yizhen sat expressionlessly in the defendant's seat. She never thought that one day, she would go against her biological father in court. The trial soon began. Yi Nanshan had Lu Hui's medical records from back then. There was also the will. However, Yizhen had another will in her hands. More importantly, she also had the medical records from back then. The doctor's statement was completely different from the medical records provided by Yi Nanshan. Yi Nanshan's lawyer was Lawyer Ding. He seized all the loopholes and led the matter to the side that was disadvantageous to Yizhen. However, the lawyer Yizhen hired was also very famous. It was Li Junxing who had recommended him to her. This person had some connections with Tang Mohan's family. His surname was also Tang, and his methods and abilities were top-notch. His tongue was like a lotus flower. No matter what trick Lawyer Ding threw at him, he could smoothly take it. Lawyer Ding repeatedly emphasized that Lu Hui had a mental problem at that time. Lawyer Tang's side was not inferior. He directly threw out the hospital's diagnosis. He said that Lu Hui only had stomach cancer, not mental illness. Lawyer Ding retorted and said that Lu Hui was depressed because she had stomach cancer, which was why she might have a mental problem. Hearing this, Yizhen was so angry that she almost laughed. She looked at Lawyer Ding and wanted to refute. Lawyer Tang gave her a look that told her to calm down. Before Ms. Lu Hui died, she was still negotiating the next cooperation project for the company. I want to know how a person with a mental problem could have such ability. Now the other party's lawyer is saying that Ms. Lu Hui has a mental problem. I think you're the one with a mental problem. Objection to the other party's lawyer's personal attack. Objection sustained. Lawyer for the plaintiff, please watch your attitude. We only look at the evidence. All our evidence shows that Ms. Lu Hui had no intention of giving the shares to Ms. Yizhen when she was alive. We all know that the last will is guided by the last will. The will in our hands is the last one made by Ms. Lu Zhen. The two sides were going back and forth, and it was very lively. For a moment, it was a stalemate. In the end, Lawyer Ding and Yi Nanshan didn't get any advantage, so they asked the judge for a temporary adjournment. Yizhen agreed. After a 10-minute adjournment, she followed Lawyer Tang out of the courtroom and whispered the results. On their side, they had done their best. With the evidence in their hands and the information they had, although they couldn't make things clear immediately, they definitely wouldn't lose. On the other side, Yi Nanshan and Lawyer Ding also walked out and whispered something outside. This was the first time Yizhen had seen Yi Nanshan after the shareholders' meeting that day. He had lost some weight, but he looked quite energetic. His eyes were full of dissatisfaction and anger when he looked at her. Yizhen didn't care at all. Because of Yi Nanshan's gaze, she thought of another point. She suddenly smiled, turned to look at Lawyer Tang, and whispered what she had just thought. Chen Wan and Yi Ningyan walked out and went to Yi Nanshan together. Yizhen, on the other hand, suddenly relaxed. She had full confidence. Before the court reopened, Yizhen received a call from Li Junxing. He asked her how the trial was going. Was there anything she could help with? Standing in the corridor, she listened to Li Junxing's voice. Yizhen felt that all her worries and fears had become insignificant. No need. Uncle Li, don't worry. I'll definitely win. Okay. Li Junxing smiled. Then I'll wait for you to win and go home. I'll celebrate for you. Okay, wait for me. After hanging up the phone, Yizhen felt as if her entire body had been replenished with spiritual power and was full of vitality. As for Yi Nanshan and the others, she didn't care about them at all. The trial continued. Lawyer Ding provided a new piece of evidence to prove that Lu Hui had a mental problem. In addition to the medicine she took, there was also the confession of a nanny in the villa. The nanny said that before Lu Hui died, she was often moody. She would either laugh or cry. There were a few times when she lost her temper at the servants in the villa. After she lost her temper, she regretted and blamed herself. She looked crazy. Yizhen sat in the dock and looked at Lawyer Ding, who was full of nonsense. She really had the urge to pull out his tongue. Suppressing her anger, she suddenly stood up after Lawyer Ding finished speaking. She looked at the judge in the court. Her eyes were clear, but her expression was faintly cold. Your Honor, I have a few questions to ask the plaintiff. Is that okay? Yes. Ask. Yizhen bowed and turned to face Yi Nanshan. Mr. Yi, I want to ask you something. Do you love Ms. Lu Hui? Yi Nanshan's expression changed and he didn't answer this question. Lawyer Ding stood up. Your Honor, this question has nothing to do with our trial. My client can refuse to answer. Your Honor, my question is definitely related to the trial and the evidence I'm going to present later. I sincerely ask the plaintiff to answer my question. Yi Nanshan looked at Yizhen. He didn't quite understand why she was asking this question, but he still gave an affirmative answer. Of course I love your mother. Since you loved my mother, how could you bear to accuse her of having a mental disorder after she passed away? What do you know? It's a fact that your mother is insane. Yizhen, don't talk nonsense just because you're unwilling to return the shares to me. Fine, I'm talking nonsense. Then, Mr. Yi, you said you love my mother. How could you cheat on my mother not long after you married her? Yizhen, what nonsense are you talking about? Yi Nanshan's expression changed, and his expression was stained with coldness. Yizhen smiled. Your Honor, Mr. Yi keeps saying that he loves my mother, Ms. Lu Hui. But in fact, not long after he married my mother, he cheated on her and betrayed her. Under such circumstances, I don't think he loves my mother. Since he doesn't love my mother, how could my mother give him all the shares? That's impossible. Do you have evidence that Yi Nanshan cheated? The judge asked. Yijin nodded. Of course I have evidence. She glanced at Lawyer Tang. Lawyer Tang took out a document at the right time. We have a DNA report. The report shows that Miss Yi Linghan, who is sitting in the audience right now, and Mr. Yi Nanshan are father and daughter. In other words, Mr. Yi Nanshan cheated on Ms. Lu Hui at the beginning of their marriage. Objection. Defendant. This kind of emotional issue has nothing to do with today's trial. Lawyer Ding stood up. His face suddenly had a trace of anxiety. Yijin looked him in the eye, and his voice was unyielding. Lawyer Ding. Mr. Yi. I want to talk about the issue. It happens to be related to today's trial. Chapter 796. Hearing this, Yi Nanshan couldn't sit still. Chen Wan and Yi Ningen, who were in the audience, all turned pale. Yi Nanshan stood up and pointed at Yijin. Yijin, what nonsense are you talking about? The will clearly stated that your mother wanted to give all her assets to me, not to a little girl like you. Mr. Yi, are you saying that my mother was not only blind, but also fell in love with you, the man who betrayed her? Is she stupid enough to give her assets to a man who almost killed her because of an affair? Yijin said this and turned to face the court. Your Honor, I strongly request that the will of that year be re-examined. I have reason to suspect that with my mother's personality, she would never give her assets to a man who hurt her and betrayed her. This was simply the turning point of the day. Your Honor, what the other party said is not true. Yi Nanshan's face turned green. Things had developed beyond his expectations. He didn't expect that Yijin would use Yi Ningen's identity to make a fuss. Not true. Yijin chuckled. His face was filled with ridicule, but he didn't back down in the slightest. Mr. Yi, you and Madam Chen Wan had Yi Ningen while you were still married to my mother. Does that count as cheating? You and Chen Wan gave birth to Yi Jinhao less than half a year after my mother passed away. Does that count as a second affair? At that time, you already had another family. You even had a son and a daughter. What makes you think that with my mother's personality, she wouldn't know anything and even give you half of the assets? Is she stupid? The series of questions made Yi Nanshan's face turn green. He pointed at Yijin for a long time, but he couldn't say a word. Yijin turned to the judge. Your Honor, the facts of today's matter are clear. I sincerely hope that the court can find out the facts and make the right judgment. His words were powerful and powerful. Yijin stood in the court. No one could match his beauty at that moment. On the plaintiff's stand, Yi Nanshan's face was as black as ink. He looked at Yijin with resentment. The court decided that there was insufficient evidence and Yi Nanshan's request was not supported. Yijin knew that she would win, but she had been holding her breath. Now that she got the result, she saw Yi Nanshan's face turn from black to white. She chuckled, thanked Lawyer Tang, and quickly left the court. Outside, Yi Nanshan's family of 3 stood there with Lawyer Ding. Their faces didn't look good. Seeing her come out, Yi Nanshan didn't move, but Yi Ningen rushed over first. Yijin, how can you be so cruel? Daddy is also your daddy. How can you be so vicious? Yijin paused and looked at Yi Ningen from top to bottom. In terms of viciousness, I really can't compare to you. Yijin looked at Yi Nanshan coldly and said, I didn't take something that wasn't mine. Yijin, you rebellious bitch. Yi Nanshan took 2 steps forward, but Yijin interrupted him before he could finish. Rebellious daughter. If I'm an unfilial daughter, then what are you, Dad? You, Mom hasn't even died yet, and you've already had a baby with another woman. I really want to know, does Mom know about your affair? I believe that if he knew, he might not have given you the remaining shares of Jianji Company. Yijin. Chen Wan couldn't help but put on the airs of a mother. You're just a child. What nonsense are you talking about? No matter what, your father is still your elder. How can you talk to your father like that? Yijin didn't respond. She stared straight at Chen Wan, acting like a good person, and sneered. Suddenly, her expression changed, and her gloomy face darkened. Her gloomy eyes swept over the three people present. Finally, her gaze fell on Chen Wan's face. Auntie, I'm actually quite curious. After so many years, have you never had nightmares at night? My mother never came to see you at night. Have you ever dreamed of my mother in the middle of the night? What nonsense are you talking about? Chen Wan's face paled. How could I dream of your mother? No. The corners of Yijin's lips curled up slightly. Her smile had a hidden meaning. It's good that you didn't. After all, if you don't do anything shameful, you won't be afraid of ghosts knocking at your door in the middle of the night. Yijin. What do you mean? Yi Inghan jumped out. She couldn't stand seeing Yijin like this. Nothing. Yijin flipped her hair and pushed it to the back of her head. I was just saying. Chen Wan's expression changed slightly. She was a little surprised. Yi Nanshan couldn't stand Yijin's strange behavior. Yijin, what are you trying to say? Have you caused enough trouble? Now that you've achieved your goal, what else do you want? Dad, you're so strange. You were the one who caused trouble first. Now that you're saying this, it's meaningless. He was the one who wanted to sue her for the shares. He was the one who used all means to kick her out of the company. How did it become her making trouble? Yijin wasn't interested in staying any longer. Her gaze fell on Yi Nanshan's face. Looking at his pale face, she wasn't sure if they knew about what happened in the past. But it didn't matter. Her counterattack was just about to begin. Yijin left the court and got into the car. She asked Zhao Li to go to the mayor's office. She knew that Li Junxing was at work, but she couldn't help but want to tell him the good news personally. However, before she could make the call, she saw Li Junxing coming out of the mayor's office building. He didn't necessarily wear a suit when he went to work, but even if he didn't, he would still wear a more formal business shirt. A dark business shirt might look a little old-fashioned to others, but he didn't wear it. However, he wasn't dressed like that. He was more elegant and had the demeanor of a business elite. At this moment, the buttons on his shirt sleeves were unbuttoned, revealing his strong elbows. His expression was very serious, as if something had happened. Behind him were his driver, Xiao Zhao, and Secretary Qin. Yijin stopped in her tracks. Li Junxing was about to get into the car, but he accidentally saw Yijin's car. He turned around and walked towards the car. He knocked on the car door. Yijin rolled down the car window, revealing her exquisite little face. Why are you here? The seriousness on Li Junxing's face disappeared, and his eyes seemed to be stained with gentleness. I won. Yijin's words made Li Junxing understand what had happened. He reached out and squeezed her hand on the car window. He always liked to do this. Really? Congratulations. Thank you. As Yijin spoke, she looked behind him. Are you going out? Li Junxing nodded, and his expression became serious again. There was an explosion at a chemical plant in the West District. I just received news. I'm going to take a look now. Yijin suddenly became nervous. How is it? Are you okay? I'm not sure. Li Junxing looked behind him. In just a short while, many officials came out. You go back first. I probably won't be home so soon today. Yijin nodded. She could tell the severity of the matter, but she said, Uncle Li, be careful. There should be a fire or something at the place of the explosion. Don't get too close. Silly girl. Li Junxing rubbed her hair and didn't say anything else. He turned around and walked towards his car without looking back. Yijin looked at his figure and ignored the gazes of others. Looking at Li Junxing's back, she suddenly felt that he was very tall and straight. Moreover, he was indestructible. Yijin soon saw the news of the explosion. It was caused by the improper operation of the staff at the chemical plant. Fortunately, it was during the shift change, but more than a dozen people still died. This was a major accident. She could see that other than Li Junxing, some familiar faces that she often saw on TV appeared at the scene of the explosion. Li Junxing had more scenes. She didn't know if it was because he was handsome and young. His expression was very solemn. Yijin saw that his sleeves were rolled up high, and his hair was no longer as smooth as before. However, the camera quickly moved away again. Yijin couldn't see him. She wanted to call him, but she didn't want to cause trouble for him, so she could only give up. That day, Li Junxing didn't come back at night. The next day, Yijin woke up early and turned on the television to watch the news. The explosion yesterday was still being reported, but the scene about Li Junxing only flashed by. She sighed in her heart and took out her phone to call Ling Xian. Before Li Junxing went to busy himself, she had some things to deal with. In order not to give Yi Nanshan a chance to react, Yijin decided to strike first. After communicating with Lawyer Tang, she decided to give him a taste of his own medicine. Didn't you say that there was a problem with the wool back then? I also think there was a problem with the wool back then. You've already cheated, and my mother still wants to give you the shares. Give you the property. Are you stupid? It's already polite not to let you leave the family with nothing. Since that's the case, what reason is there for you to continue being smug? Therefore, Yijin pointed at the lawsuit and sued Yi Nanshan. A daughter suing her father. She was the first in the entire Qing city. Lawyer Tang analyzed the case for her very seriously and told her the possible outcome. Yijin didn't care. What was reputation? Could it be eaten? She really couldn't take this lying down. She really wanted to vent her anger for Lu Hui. Of course, the most important thing was that if she caused trouble for Yi Nanshan in the open, they wouldn't have the time to destroy the evidence from back then. They wouldn't have thought that her real goal wasn't the shares that had already fallen into Yi Nanshan's hands. She wanted to find evidence that Qin Wan had killed Lu Hui. However, she didn't need to tell Lawyer Tang this. Lawyer Tang, don't worry. I'm not a person who pesters people endlessly. However, I can't just let go of my mother's grievances for so many years. Just think of it as me wanting to vent my mother's anger. I understand. Don't worry, Miss Yi. I will definitely try my best to win this lawsuit. Thank you. It didn't matter whether she won or not. If she found the evidence and sent Qin Wan and Yi Nanshan to prison, she would have achieved her goal. After communicating with Lawyer Tang, she handed the information in her hands to Lawyer Tang in as much detail as possible and dealt with some urgent official business in the company. She was busy until almost 1 in the afternoon. When Yijin was about to have lunch, she remembered that she didn't know how Li Junxing was. She called Li Junxing, and the person who answered the phone was Secretary Qin. He said that Li Junxing was now in the hospital, not in the factory. Yijin couldn't sit still anymore. Uncle Li is in the hospital. What happened to him? Is he okay? Yijin didn't notice that her knuckles were a little white. Heath's Secretary Qin seemed to be very noisy, so Yijin didn't hear it clearly. She vaguely heard a hospital. She hung up the phone without hesitation and rushed out. If Zhao Li hadn't moved quickly, she would have left him behind. Sitting in the car, Yijin felt a little guilty. She shouldn't have listened to Li Junxing and not gone to the scene to see him. Now it was great. She still remembered the explosion in Tianjin City clearly. There must have been a few small explosions after that. The fire spread and injured many firefighters. Li Junxing was at the scene. What if he encountered such a thing? The more anxious she was, the more she wanted the car to arrive immediately. But today, for some reason, the road was blocked. Lu Zhishuan's call came at this time. Shenzhen. Uncle. What's the matter? I heard that your father is suing you, saying that there's a problem with your mother's will. When Yi Nanshan sued her, she didn't want her grandfather and uncle to worry, so she didn't tell them about it. She didn't even have a public hearing, but her uncle still found out. Yes, but it's fine now. She briefly explained the matter and comforted her uncle that she was fine. Your father, that bastard. Lu Zhishuan didn't care at all that it was inappropriate to say that about Yi Nanshan in front of Lu Jin. I shouldn't have let my sister marry him in the first place. He's really an ingrate. Yijin didn't say anything. Wasn't that right? Decades of feelings were all used in the end. Shenzhen, don't be anxious. Uncle will help you with this matter. It's okay, Uncle. Yijin had already made up her mind. Uncle, don't worry. I know what I'm doing. Before she found the evidence, she didn't even intend to say that there was something fishy about Lu Hui's death. Why should Lu Zhishuan and the others worry? Shenzhen, take some time to go home. Your grandfather and I have something for you. Okay. Yijin didn't know what her grandfather and uncle had for her. However, she hadn't seen her grandfather and uncle for a while. After hanging up the phone, Yijin's anxiety didn't lessen at all. Thinking that something might have happened to Li Junxing, she really couldn't sit still for a minute. When was it? Would Li Junxing have such a place in her heart? She used to think that she was alone, but she didn't expect that she would meet someone like Li Junxing. He was clearly in a high position, but he didn't put on any airs. He had a handsome face, but he never seemed to attract peach blossoms. The more Yijin thought about it, the more worried she became. Finally, there was no traffic jam ahead, and she arrived at the first hospital smoothly. There seemed to be a lot of people in the first hospital today. Yijin called Secretary Qin as she walked inside. She didn't know how Li Junxing was injured, and her heart was extremely anxious. When the call finally went through, she heard her phone ringing beside her hand. She was very familiar with the ringtone. She turned around and found that Li Junxing was sitting on the bench in the corridor. He was holding his phone in one hand, and his other hand was wrapped in bandages. His clothes were no longer as neat as they were yesterday. There were some bloodstains and stains on them. A few strands of his hair were disobediently falling in front of his forehead. Just looking at it like that, she didn't know how badly he was injured. Yijin quickly ran over and held his hand before Li Junxing picked up the phone. Uncle Li, are you okay? Li Junxing didn't expect Yijin to come over. He was stunned for a moment. How did you know I was here? Yijin shook her head and didn't answer his question. Instead, she looked at his hand. Her eyes were a little red, and there were faint tears in them. Uncle Li, it's a small injury. As Li Junxing spoke, he glared at Secretary Qin, who wasn't far behind her. Secretary Qin shrank his head and didn't dare to answer. There were people coming and going in the corridor, and the two of them were equally outstanding. Naturally, they attracted a lot of attention. Secretary Qin, who discovered this, took a step forward. Mayor Li, there are a lot of people here. Look, I'll go back first. Get someone to guard here. Remember, call me as soon as possible if anything happens. Li Junxing's hand was injured, and Secretary Qin also wanted him to go back and rest quickly. Now that the situation at the factory had basically stabilized, Li Junxing could also take a breather. Holding Yizhen's hand, Li Junxing followed her out of the hospital and got into Yizhen's car. Along the way, many people saw Li Junxing and felt that he looked familiar. However, because his current image wasn't good, they didn't think of the mayor on TV. As soon as she got into the car, Yizhen held Li Junxing's injured hand. "Uncle Li, how's your hand injury? Is it serious? Other than your hand, where else are you injured?" "It's fine, it's just a small injury." Li Junxing raised his uninjured hand and held hers. "Don't worry, I'm fine." "How can you be fine?" Yizhen didn't believe him at all. She looked at the blood stains on her body. "Where else are you injured? Don't try to hide it from me." Li Junxing reached out and hugged her tightly in his arms. His chin pressed against her collarbone, and his voice was very soft. "Don't worry, I haven't married you yet. Of course, I won't let anything happen to me." He was still glib-tongued at a time like this. Yizhen gently pushed him and looked at Zhao Li in front of her. Her car didn't have a glass partition in the middle, and she was too embarrassed to let Zhao Li see them being intimate. Li Junxing seemed to know what she was worried about. He didn't take any further action and calmly explained the injury on his hand. "Yesterday, the factory exploded. More than a dozen people died, and dozens were injured. The fire in the factory was still burning, and the firefighters had already gone to put out the fire. He commanded at the scene and asked them to arrange and treat the injured as soon as possible. However, he didn't expect there to be a second explosion. At that time, Li Junxing happened to be consoling an author. Although he was already prepared when he heard the sound, his hand was still injured by the sparks that flew over. It's not very serious. It's just a small piece of skin." Xiao Chen was too nervous and insisted that I go to the hospital to bandage it. He said that he had been inside for an entire night, so he should go back and rest first. "That's good too. Go home and sleep for a while. If there's anything else, we can talk about it after you rest." Yizhen looked at the dark bruises under his eyes and felt a little heartache. "Uncle Li, don't go there again. It's impossible not to go." This matter was so big that the internet was in an uproar. They still had a lot of things to deal with, so Li Junxing could only rest for the time being. When she returned home, Yizhen hurriedly ran to the bathroom. At this time, she was glad that she came out after putting it in. Li Junxing was taking off his clothes with one hand. When she saw this, she quickly went forward. "Let me help you." It was fine if his hand wasn't injured, but he had to pay special attention to his injured hand. Yizhen carefully took off his clothes. Looking at the red stains on the bandage, she felt her heart ache again. "Uncle Li, does your hand hurt?" Li Junxing looked at her and suddenly smiled. "Why don't you kiss me? Maybe after you kiss me, it won't hurt anymore." This person was still not serious at a time like this. Yizhen bit her lip, but F took the initiative to tiptoe and kiss his lips. She tasted the taste of tobacco in his mouth. She was stunned for a moment. The slight taste of mint smoke surprised her. She only smelled blood just now, but she didn't notice that there was also the smell of tobacco on his body. But even so, Yizhen still felt that Li Junxing was very charming. She imitated him and kissed him deeply. Her hands climbed up his neck, but she was careful not to touch his wound. And because of her passion, he gave her a deeper kiss. After the kiss ended, Yizhen's legs felt a little weak. She placed her hands on his chest. She looked at him gently and worriedly. "You smoked?" "Yes." After not sleeping for a night, he was very sleepy. He smoked too to refresh himself. "Is the matter this time very troublesome?" "It's all right. It would be a little troublesome." He had only been in office for a few months, and such a thing had happened. He would have to deal with the aftermath, explain to the people, and explain to the higher-ups. He would probably be very busy for the time being. Don't smoke next time. Yijin looked at him. Uncle Lee, you told me last time that everything will work out when it comes to it. So, I think you don't have to worry too much. Everything will be fine. I know. Although he said that, such a thing happened during his term of office, and it was due to his lack of supervision. Li Junqing didn't intend to tell her too much. If he said too much, it would only make her worry. After entering the bathroom, Li Junqing, who was about to take a shower, blinked when he saw the bathtub full of bathwater. He turned around and called out to Yizhen. What's wrong? Yizhen ran quickly. Is your wound hurting again? Uncle Li, other than your hand, where are you injured? I'm fine. Li Junqing stood there, looking a little troubled. It's just that my hand is injured, so it's not convenient for me to take a shower. I'll help you. Yizhen spoke quickly. Li Junqing looked at her with a flash of a smile in his eyes. Yizhen was good in everything else, but she was too shy in some aspects. For example, if she was asked to change places or try some new positions, she would be shy for a long time. Such an opportunity today was really rare. Li Junqing staggered and almost couldn't stand. Let me help you in. Yizhen didn't think at all. Li Junqing's hand was injured, not his foot. Okay. Li Junqing was helped into the bathtub by Yizhen. Yizhen carefully raised his injured hand and placed it on the edge of the bathtub. Be careful. Don't get it wet. Li Junqing didn't say anything and watched as she eagerly brought a towel to bathe him. He looked at the worry on her face. Chapter 797. Li Junqing sat in the bathtub and looked at Yizhen. There was a hint of a hidden smile in his eyes. His little girl might not have noticed it, but her attitude towards him had changed a lot compared to the beginning. His little girl hadn't noticed this change, but he had. Uncle Lee, next time you encounter something like this, don't rush to the front. Okay. Actually, it's none of your business. There are so many people, Yizhen couldn't continue. This thought was actually a little selfish. When she was still a commoner, she would have hoped that their official would have done more for her. But one day, when she became the family of these officials, she only hoped that they would be safe. That fire was not a joke. What if there was something okay? After Yizhen finished complaining, she took the bath towel and was about to bathe Li Junqing. However, at this moment, she suddenly realized a problem and stopped her movements. Li Junqing watched as her face turned red bit by bit. Seeing that she stood there motionless, he pretended to be puzzled and asked. What's wrong? Uncle Li, Yizhen handed the bath towel to Li Junqing with a slightly red face. You only have one hand injured. You can do it yourself. But, I'm afraid of touching the wound. Yizhen gritted her teeth. The water was very clear. She could see at a glance that in the water, she retracted her gaze. She was still in the mood to be distracted at a time like this. Uncle Li, you can bathe yourself. Okay. Li Junqing didn't object. He took the bath towel, but his hands suddenly loosened. The wet bath towel fell onto his injured arm. Li Junqing took a deep breath. Yizhen's expression changed. Uncle Li, are you okay? I'm fine. Li Junqing said with a weak expression, maybe it's because I didn't sleep last night. I'm a little tired. I'm fine. He reached out to get the bath towel again, but Yizhen was one step faster. She looked at the wet bandage and felt her face turn pale. The bandage is wet. What should I do? Why don't I send you back to see a doctor? Or should I call a doctor over? No, it should be fine. Just help me bandage it later. But, I'm so tired. Li Juanqing's face looked weaker and weaker. I want to take a shower and have a good sleep. Then let me help you. How could Yijin dare to let him make a move? She took the towel and began to bathe Li Juanqing. Her face was full of worry, so she didn't see the flash of joy and the smile of success in Li Juanqing's eyes. Washing his upper body was fine. Although Yijin's movements were a little clumsy, he still managed to wash his body smoothly. However, when he washed his lower body, he felt a little awkward. She stared at Li Juanqing's body underwater, her face burning. Uncle Li, it's fine. Go ahead and wash yourself. I just want to sleep. Yijin gritted his teeth, not daring to hesitate any longer. He closed his eyes and reached into the water. By the time Yijin finished bathing Li Juanqing and came out of the bathroom, her hands were sore. Looking at the refreshed and energetic Li Juanqing, no matter how slow she was, she realized that something was wrong. Uncle Li, you. Was he pretending just now? You're tired, aren't you? Li Juanqing looked at her and smiled gently. I'm sorry. The main thing is that I can't control myself when you bathe me like that. It's been hard on you. Yijin wasn't as thick-skinned as him. She couldn't say that as if it was as normal as eating. She gritted her teeth and glared at him. You still said that your wound hurts. Because he was injured and the wound hurt, he had to trouble her to help him with his hands. But shouldn't the wound hurt and rest? Yes. Li Juanqing nodded and looked at his wet bandage. Look, it's all wet. Help me bandage it again. Yijin, who had been tricked, didn't want to talk to him at all. Looking at the wound, she could only helplessly get the medicine box. When she removed the bandage on Li Juanqing's hand, her caution turned into worry. How did you get so badly hurt? There was a large burn mark, and the red muscles inside made her feel uncomfortable. She bit her lip, and the corners of her eyes reddened uncontrollably. It's fine. I already said it's a small injury. As long as you're not angry with me, it's fine. Yijin glared at him and didn't say anything else. She picked up the medicine prescribed by the doctor and applied it to his wound again. Then, she carefully bandaged his wound. After the wound was bandaged, Yijin took the medicine box and was about to return to the living room. Don't go. Sleep with me for a while. You're already injured like this, and you're still thinking about that. It's just sleeping. What are you thinking about? Li Juanqing couldn't help but laugh. Besides, didn't you help me solve it just now? You're still talking about it. Then I won't say it. It's made of. Yijin couldn't help but glare at him again. In the end, she couldn't bear to reject him. She followed him to the bed and lay down to rest. The two of them lay down together. In the end, Yijin couldn't help but fall asleep. When she woke up again, it was already afternoon. Looking at Li Juanqing, who was still sleeping, she got up quietly and quietly walked to the living room outside. When Li Juanqing woke up, he saw Yijin cooking in the kitchen. She was wearing an apron, and her shoulder-length black hair was tied into a small braid at the back of her head. The light of dusk shone in from the kitchen. She looked so beautiful that it was a little unreal. When Yijin took out the dishes, her waist was hugged. She didn't turn around. Instead, she gently patted the back of that hand. Okay, there's one more dish. We can eat when it's done. Li Juanqing didn't let go. He buried his face in Yijin's neck. His breath was warm, accompanied by his pleasant and clear voice. Xinjin, you smell so good. Yijin's hands paused. How do I smell good? You smell like oil. My whole body smells good. Li Junxing hugged Yijin's waist with his uninjured hand. At this moment, his expression looked extremely sincere. Do you want me to prove it to you? Yijin took his hand away and looked at him warily. No need. Go out. I still have to cook. You can cook later. Li Junxing was addicted to teasing her. He took a step forward and hugged her again. I'm very hungry now, but I want to eat you more. Li Junxing. That was enough. His hand was already injured. Wasn't he going to stop? Yes, this is the first time you've called me by my full name. Li Junxing looked at her sideways. I think it would be better if you removed the word Li. Mayor Li, Mr. Li, have you had enough? Yijin gently pushed him. Do you want me to finish the rest of the dishes? Not enough. Li Junxing kissed her face. You only used your hand just now. It doesn't count. You really don't want to consider doing it in the kitchen again. Li Junxing smiled and finally decided not to tease her. Okay. You cook. I'll go out, okay. Yijin heaved a sigh of relief. Li Junxing turned around and left, but at this moment, he deliberately took a step back and blew gently in her ear. Sooner or later, I'll give you the kitchen. Yijin gritted her teeth as she watched Li Junxing walk out as if nothing had happened. Was this person really the mayor of a city? How could he be so, the latter adjective was too shameful. Yijin shook her head and forced herself to focus on cooking and not think about anything else. When Yijin brought the dishes to the table, she found that Li Junxing was on the phone. He had his back to her and was standing near the balcony. Those people can't wait any longer. I don't believe that they won't use this matter to make a fuss. Don't worry. I know what I'm doing. Okay. I'll have to trouble you to help me investigate the matter last time. As for the current matter, don't worry. I can handle it. Don't worry. Although I came a little late, I'm not a pushover that anyone can pinch. Okay. Hearing the voice behind him, Li Junxing hung up the phone. Yijin didn't hear everything, but her eyes were filled with worry again. Uncle Li, will this matter be very troublesome? No matter how unfamiliar she was with the officialdom, she knew that this matter was probably very big and not easy to settle. Why do you ask? Last time, didn't a lot of officials be punished after the incident in Tianjin City? I'm afraid that you'll also. Li Junxing sat down at the dining table and saw the worry in Yijin's eyes. He couldn't help but laugh. Why? You're afraid that I'll lose my job. I can't afford to support you. Yijin couldn't help but glare at him again. He was already so worried, so how could he joke? Yes, I'm afraid that you won't be able to support me if you lose your job. That's troublesome. Li Junxing smiled. If I really lose my job, I can only rely on you. After all, you're the chairman now. When the time comes, I'll drive and carry your bags for you every day. How about being your assistant? Nothing much. Yijin scooped a bowl of soup and placed it in front of him. Your salary is too high. I can't afford it. Of course others can't afford it, but if it's you, you can devote your life to me. Yijin glanced at him. He was still not serious at this time. Okay. When you lose your job, you, the mayor, will be my assistant. You'll be an assistant during the day and a cowherd at night. How about that? Li Junxing reached out and pulled Yijin's hand to his side. It's night now, so do you need me to serve you now, Chairman Yi? Yijin's face blushed again. She withdrew her hand and admitted defeat. In terms of acting like a hooligan and being thick-skinned, she was definitely no match for him. She really wanted to ask, do your subordinates know that you're such a hooligan? However, she didn't have the chance to ask Li Junxing. Li Junxing answered a call, and his expression changed. Okay, I'll be right there. Uncle Li, Yizhen understood the meaning behind his words and immediately stood up. Where are you going? I'm going to the factory in the West District. There was another explosion there. Li Junxing's expression was rare. He didn't expect that things would not only not calm down, but the impact would also become worse. Chapter 798. Yizhen looked at his wound. He was still injured, and he wanted to run to the scene of the fire. They are here because they are here, and I am here because I am here. Li Junxing knew what she was thinking. He pinched her palm and kissed her forehead. Okay. Wait for me at home. When I'm done, I'll come back. But, don't worry, I won't let anything happen to me. As Li Junxing spoke, he leaned close to her ear and whispered, After all, I haven't tried it with you in the kitchen. Half of the worry on Yizhen's face disappeared. He didn't know what kind of expression to put on after hearing his words. Li Junxing kissed her lips and turned to leave. When he opened the door, Li Junxing stopped in his tracks and turned to look at Yizhen. By the way, there's already some progress on the matter you asked me to investigate last time. Don't worry. There should be results in a few days. All right. Yizhen's heart tightened. He still couldn't let go of Lu Hui's death. That night, Li Junxing didn't come back again. Yizhen was really worried. She got up in the middle of the night and browsed the local news twice, but she didn't see Li Junxing again. On the other side of the city, Yi Ningyan was drinking wine with a gloomy face. Her face was ashen. Looking at Chen Liang, who was sitting beside her and pouring wine for her, she pushed him away. Get lost. Useless thing, you still haven't succeeded. Chen Liang was pushed by Yi Ningyan. There was a trace of annoyance in his eyes, but only for a moment. Soon, he sat down again and poured wine for Yi Ningyan. What are you angry about? I know you think I'm useless because I didn't kidnap your sister. But there was someone around her recently. I can't make a big deal out of it. It was true that he wanted to vent Yi Ningyan's anger, but after the person who followed Yizhen was arrested last time, he also reacted. Yizhen was not someone to be trifled with. The helper that the other party found was the mayor. At that time, he was impulsive and said in front of Yi Ningyan that he could deal with it, but Chen Liang felt a lingering fear after thinking about it. He had already lost 2 of his men. If 2 more came, his losses would be too great. In the end, isn't it because you're useless? Yi Ningyan's tone was full of resentment. If you are useful, tie her up and kill her. I want to see how she can be arrogant. Yes, yes, yes. I'm useless. Chen Liang really liked Yi Ningyan. He really didn't take her scolding words to heart. However, he said, speaking of which, her man is amazing. Without Li Junxing, wouldn't it be very easy to deal with a woman? That's easy for you to say. He's a mayor. How are you going to deal with him? If it weren't for the fact that she couldn't touch Li Junxing, would she be afraid of a mere Yizhen? Yi Ningyan became angrier when she thought that Yizhen could hook up with Li Junxing. However, she suddenly sat up and took out her phone to look at the latest news. The more she read, the bigger the smile on her face became. After putting down the phone, she glanced at Chen Liang. All right, I know you couldn't do anything about what happened before, but there's a good thing for you to do right now. What? Bring down Li Junxing. Are you crazy? That's the mayor. How? I have a brilliant idea. Yi Ningyan took out her phone and showed Chen Liang the news she had just read. Look at this. Chen Liang finished reading the news, but he didn't understand. Yi Ningyan smiled and leaned close to Chen Liang's ear to tell him what she thought. Chen Liang's eyes widened, and he nodded repeatedly. Wonderful, it's really wonderful. You're really smart. Of course. Yi Ningyan smiled brightly, but there was a hint of viciousness in her eyes. Without Li Junxing, let's see how Yizhen will rise. When Li Junxing falls, Yizhen will naturally let us do whatever we want. Brilliant, really brilliant. Chen Liang smiled and pulled Yi Ningyan into his arms, pressing her down. In order to celebrate our upcoming success, I'm going to celebrate. Cheers. When he said cheers, he took a sip of wine and fed it to Yi Ningyan's mouth. Endless disgust flashed through Yi Ningyan's heart, but she still had to use Chen Liang. She could only reach out and hook her arm around Chen Liang's neck to cater to his kiss. When Li Junxing returned home, it was already the afternoon of the third day. After 3 days of rescue, the fire in the West Side factory was finally under control. The relevant personnel of the factory were also called to investigate, and a few of the main responsible persons had been taken into custody. This matter had come to an end for the time being. When Yizhen heard the news that Li Junxing had returned home, she rushed home as fast as possible. Uncle Li. When Yizhen returned home, Li Junxing was changing clothes in his room. Although the office where he worked had prepared clothes for him to change into, he had basically been at the scene of the fire for the past few days. He would be dirty all over. Uncle Li, Yizhen quickly walked forward and placed her hands on his shoulders. She looked him up and down. Are you okay? I'm fine. Her concerned gaze made Li Junxing very happy. He pulled her hands off his body. Didn't I tell you? I'm fine. You're still talking about it. Yizhen's eyes were red. I've been worried to death these past few days. Li Junxing wasn't always free. Although he had called her to tell her that he was safe, she was afraid that he was lying to her. She only heaved a sigh of relief when she saw that he was fine. What? Are you worried that if something happens to me, you'll become a widow? You're still talking about it. Yizhen punched him in the chest. Li Junxing clutched his chest and let out a low cry. Uncle Li. Are you okay? Yizhen was afraid that he was injured and wanted to check on him. However, Li Junxing took the opportunity to hug her, lowered his head, and gave her a long and delicate kiss. Yizhen's legs went soft from his kiss, and the two of them somehow moved to the bed. Just as his hand was about to reach into her clothes, there was a knock on the door. Uncle Li, Yizhen's voice was a little hoarse. She looked at Li Junxing with a blush and gently patted his back. Get up first. Ignore it. After not seeing her for a few days, Li Junxing didn't want to let go of her at all. If there's no one, I'll naturally leave. He lowered his head and buried it in her neck to continue. Yizhen quickly pushed him away. Stop fooling around. It should be Zhao Li. When she came back just now, in order to save time, she asked Zhao Li to buy groceries for her. After kissing Li Junxing's face, Yizhen was actually a little tempted. Alright, go take a shower. I'll go cook. Take a shower and rest for a while. I'll call you when the meal is ready. Li Junxing grabbed her hand and placed it in his palm. He gently squeezed it. Next time, we can hire a nanny or order takeout. I'm not with you because I want you to cook for me. I know. Yizhen's heart was slightly touched. Of course, she knew that he didn't need her to do these things, but she wanted to do it for him. Li Junxing was indeed tired. After taking a shower, he didn't feel sleepy at all. He walked all the way to the kitchen and could already smell the fragrance of the food in the kitchen. Yizhen's cooking skills had improved a lot recently. Not only were her movements faster, but the taste had also improved. When she saw Li Junxing come out, she smiled. Sit down first. It'll be ready soon. Li Junqing didn't respond. He just leaned against the door and quietly looked at Yijin. If he could, he would stay with her like this. Li Junqing came out of the fire scene. He rested at home for 2 days. Yijin didn't accompany Li Junqing at home all the time. She had a lot of things to do after handing over the painting company to her. Especially in the past 2 days, she was still fighting a lawsuit with Yi Nanshan, but Yi Nanshan said that he wanted to hold a shareholders meeting again. Yijin didn't know what Yi Nanshan wanted to do. However, she believed that Chairman Shen and the others wouldn't immediately stand on Yi Nanshan's side. Then, what was Yi Nanshan's goal? She didn't know, but she agreed. After all, it was just a shareholders meeting. She wasn't afraid of him. Before that, she talked about the 2 pending cases in the company. She fully displayed her abilities. The subordinates who had some complaints about her becoming the chairman, even Yi Nanshan's people, had no choice but to shut up and stop mentioning that her position as the chairman wasn't right. She knew that those people might still be doing it for Li Junqing's sake. If it was in the past, she would feel uncomfortable and couldn't accept it. She would want to not rely on anyone. However, one day, she really used Li Junqing's fame to achieve her goal. She was very indifferent. Firstly, she believed that the painting company itself had the ability to do so. Secondly, she had lost her mother since she was a teenager. No matter how close her grandfather and uncle were, they were still separated by a layer. For many years, she had always been alone. But now, it was different. She had Li Junqing behind her. Li Junqing's existence let her know that she also had someone to rely on and someone to like her. When she was in the mud, there would also be someone who wanted to pull her out. When she was fighting alone, there would also be someone who stood by her side and told her that he was with her. With such a premise in place, why would Yijin care about his pride? Saturday was supposed to be a day to rest, but Yijin woke up early in the morning. She changed her clothes and looked like she was about to go out. Li Junqing was originally reading the newspaper, but because of her movements, he focused his attention on her. Isn't it Saturday today? Do you still have to work? No. I'm going to Grandpa's house. Do you want me to go with you? Li Junqing put down the newspaper and stood up. No need. Yijin looked at his hand that was still wrapped in bandages. Your injury hasn't healed yet. Don't run around. Rest well at home and wait for me to come back. What? You don't want me to see your parents? Yes. Yijin turned to look at him because of his teasing voice. You haven't slept well for the past few days. You look dispirited and don't look well. I'm afraid that my grandfather and uncle won't agree to it. Li Junqing smiled. He stood up and held Yijin's hand. There was a faint teasing look in his eyes. Don't worry. Even if I'm a little more dispirited, your grandfather won't disagree. You don't even know how much he likes me. He likes you because he thinks you're the son of a good friend. If you tell him that you want to be with his granddaughter, I think he'll beat you up. I'm so scared. Li Junqing made a scared expression. Such a fierce family. Why don't I give up? In your dreams. Yijin raised an eyebrow at him. Let me tell you, you won't be able to get rid of me in this life. Then won't I be in trouble? You just found out. It's too late to regret it now. Yijin blinked her quick-witted eyes and looked at him provocatively. The two of them bickered for a while before Yijin picked up her bag and left in a hurry. Not long after she went downstairs, Li Junqing, who had already sat back down to continue reading the newspaper, heard a knock on the door. He smiled and went to open the door. You forgot to bring. When he saw the two uniformed people standing outside, the smile on his face disappeared. Mayor Li, right? One of the older prosecutors took a step forward politely. We now suspect that you have something to do with the explosion at the factory in the West District. Please come with us to assist in the investigation. Li Junxing wasn't in a hurry to move. He looked at the two people in front of him and said calmly, I have something to do with the explosion at the factory in the West District. Yes. The younger prosecutor couldn't hold it in anymore. Someone reported that you have something to do with this matter. We were only ordered to bring you back for investigation. So, Mayor Li, please cooperate and come back with us to assist in the investigation. A light flashed through Li Junxing's eyes. He suddenly smiled. Okay. No problem, I'll go with you. But can I take a coat? Yes. Thank you. Li Junxing returned to his room and sent 2 messages while he was taking his coat. He deleted the messages and left his phone at home. He put it directly on the coffee table and left with the 2 prosecutors. When Yizhen arrived at the Lu family, Lu Manjiang and Lu Zhishuan were both there. Grandpa, uncle. They sat down in the living room. The nanny of the Lu family brought out tea and snacks for Yizhen and then left the living room. Lu Manjiang looked at his granddaughter, and his eyes were filled with heartache. Xinjin, why didn't you tell Grandpa that your father wanted to ask you for shares? Grandpa, isn't everything fine now? Don't worry. My father didn't take advantage of me. Is this a matter of taking advantage of me? Lu Manjiang was furious. I really regret it now. Back then, I shouldn't have let your mother marry your father. Now, not only did I harm her, but I also harmed you, Grandpa. I already said that I'm fine. Don't think about it anymore. What happened back then was already in the past. Lu Hui was no longer here. Moreover, Lu Hui didn't expect that she would meet a scumbag like Yi Nanshan. Grandpa, you actually don't have to be anxious. Although I'm in a lawsuit with my father. But he didn't win. He still lost. Now, I'm planning to sue him. Don't worry. I won't let myself suffer a loss. You. How could Lu Manjiang not know that his granddaughter was just comforting him? It was difficult to find such a biological father in the whole country who would go to court with his biological daughter for a few shares. He was angry and hateful, but he didn't forget today's business. Forget it. I asked your uncle to call you here this time because I have something to tell you. Chapter 799. Lu Zhishuan didn't say anything until Lu Manjiang finished speaking. Then, he pushed a document in front of Yizhen. Yizhen didn't quite understand and picked up the document. Yizhen's eyes widened as he read the contents of the document. She looked at Lu Manjiang and Lu Zhishuan in disbelief. How can there be such a thing? Why would my dad sign this? That was impossible. This was completely out of character for Yi Nanshan. With Yi Nanshan's personality, how could he sign such a clause that was completely unfavorable to him? Lu Manjiang snorted, his eyes filled with coldness. Yes. If your father was in his current position, how could he be willing to sign such a clause? Yizhen stared at the document, the shock in his heart still lingering. It was an agreement between Yi Nanshan and Lu Zhen. From the date of the agreement, it could be seen that it was almost 20 years ago. The agreement stated that Jihui Company would be established by Lu Hui and Yi Nanshan. Other than the shares needed for financing, the remaining shares would be jointly owned by the two of them. The division of shares was not the point of the agreement. The point was that it stated that Yi Nanshan and Lu Hui were husband and wife. The two of them jointly owned the company. However, if either party betrays the marriage during the marriage, the betrayer must unconditionally transfer the company's shares to the other party. Back then, I didn't agree with your mother marrying your father at all. But your mother is stubborn. All I want is to be with your father. No matter how I tried to stop her, I couldn't make her waver. In the end, I could only agree. After your mother got married, she set up a company and started a business for your father. I watched her run until she was tired. Even when she was pregnant with you, she was still running orders with clients. My heart ached for her. But I think your father is a cold-hearted person. I think he's a heartless person. Lu Manjiang couldn't hide the sadness in his voice. I know your mother's personality. If you don't see the truth, you won't believe anything. I had no choice but to find your father in private and ask him to sign this agreement at the beginning of their company's establishment. My dad agreed. How is that possible? This was not Yi Nanshan's style at all. He had no choice but to agree. Lu Manjiang still thought of Yi Nanshan's attitude at that time and felt it was ironic. Your mother was pregnant and had you. Your dad probably needs to use your mom to get more. So he agreed. What Lu Manjiang didn't mention was how Yi Nanshan swore that he would never betray Lu Hui. He said that he was sincere to Lu Hui and didn't need to sign such an agreement. But who was Lu Manjiang? He didn't trust Yi Nanshan at all. A man's behavior is done, not spoken. He was very insistent and said that if Yi Nanshan refused to sign, it would mean that he did not love Lu Hui at all. Since he did not love her, why would Lu Hui work for him? Yi Nanshan was a cunning man. In the end, he knew that he could not win against Lu Manjiang, so he could only agree. After he agreed, he did not forget to take the agreement to Lu Hui and tell her how much he loved her. Sure enough, Lu Hui was deeply moved. In the following days, she worked even harder for the company. Lu Manjiang's heart ached at the thought of his daughter's stupidity. But Yi Nanshan was Yi Zhen's biological father after all. It was better not to mention those things. Yi Zhen nodded and held the agreement, but there was still a question. Grandpa, if that's the case, why didn't you take it out when my mom passed away? I was very sad when your mom passed away. Plus, you were still young. Your mom made a will and divided the property into two, giving it to you and your dad. That was your mom's last wish. We also thought that you were his biological daughter after all. He had to take it into consideration, but who would have thought? Lu Manjiang didn't say anything else. But the aging on his face became more and more obvious. If his acquaintance in the court hadn't told him about it, he wouldn't have known that Yi Nanshan was such a beast. He was so beast that he didn't hesitate to sue his own daughter in court for some shares, for some property. What was even more outrageous was that he had the cheek to say that Lu Hui was unconscious when she died. Lu Manjiang's chest heaved violently when he thought of what Yi Nanshan had done. Seeing this, Lu Zhishuan stepped forward and patted him on the back. Dad, don't be angry. Now that Jinjin has grown up, let's give this document to Jinjin, and let Jinjin decide what to do next. In fact, with Lu Zhishuan's personality, he really wanted to kill Yi Nanshan at any time. But no matter what, he was Yi Zhen's biological father. Whether it was him or Lu Manjiang, they didn't want to put Yi Zhen in a difficult position. Thank you, Grandpa. Thank you, Uncle. Yi Zhen looked at the document. Now, no matter what Yi Nanshan did, she wasn't afraid. She really didn't care how much property she could get, but she really didn't want her mother's painstaking efforts to benefit others. Jinjin, do what you want to do. No matter what, Grandpa will support you. Okay. Thank you, Grandpa. Yi Zhen took the document and left the Lu family. She felt that the anger that had been suppressed in her heart for a long time was finally relieved. She didn't rush home, but went to find Lawyer Tang and showed him the document. Lawyer Tang said that it was a very good breakthrough. Yi Yinghan and Yi Nanshan's father-daughter relationship, and Yi Nanshan gave birth to Yi Jinhao less than half a year after marrying Chen Wan. Both of these things could be considered as an affair, and with this document in hand. If Yi Zhen wanted to sue Yi Nanshan again, she would basically win. Since Yijin trusted lawyer Tang, she had full authority to deal with these professional matters. After making a copy of the document for lawyer Tang, Yijin returned home with the original. Unexpectedly, when she entered the house, she found that Li Junxing wasn't there. The injury on his hand hadn't healed yet, and the matter of the factory in the West had come to an end. Did he go to work? This person really didn't know how to take care of his body. Didn't he know that she would worry if he worked so hard? It was useless to persuade him. Yijin thought about it and searched for some nutritious medicinal meals on the internet. She planned to wait for Li Junxing to come back later and give him a good meal. In the end, she waited for the whole night, but Li Junxing didn't come back. Yijin called Li Junxing, but found that his phone was on the coffee table. Yijin suddenly had a bad premonition. She took out her phone and searched for the local news. The explosion case of the factory in the West was still under investigation. It only said that the person in charge of the factory and the relevant responsible persons were detained. Other than that, there was no other news. What exactly happened? Yijin was so worried that she didn't sleep well the whole night. Was Li Junxing okay? She really hoped that he didn't bring his phone and nothing else happened. Yijin entered the company with a pair of dark circles under her eyes. As soon as she got out of the elevator, she saw Chute walking in her direction in a hurry. What's wrong? Chute stopped and looked in the direction of the chairman's office. Her expression was a little awkward. The old chairman is here. Really? Yijin was stunned. Yi Nanshan still had time to come these few days. Shouldn't he be at home thinking of ways to get back the shares in his hands? Of course, his actions must be in vain. After all, she was someone with an agreement in hand. I got it. Thank you. Yijin yawned. She, who hadn't slept well the whole night, was really sleepy now. Make me a cup of coffee and postpone the morning meeting for half an hour. Yes. Chute responded and left. Yijin pulled herself together. Thinking of the document in her hands, she pushed open the office door without the slightest fear. Yi Nanshan was still sitting behind the chairman's desk. Yi Ningen and Chen Wan were still standing on either side of him. TSK. Every time Yi Nanshan appeared, there would always be a scene like this. Boring. Really boring. Yijin's face darkened. She walked straight to the chairman's desk and stood still. Mr. Yi, this is my seat. Please move aside. What did you call me? Yi Nanshan was already angry when she called him that in court last time. Yi Nanshan looked at his daughter and really hated himself now. Why didn't he strangle this rebellious daughter to death in the past? Yijin, you've got guts. You're actually so disobedient that you even dare to sue your father. If she really wanted to say something, she could only say that Yi Ningen was talking nonsense. If I were you, you'd be more tactful and give up the position of chairman to Dad. Of course, you have to give up the company's shares as well. Otherwise, I'm afraid you won't have a good time in the future. Yi Ningen, are you done? If you're done, then leave. Yijin, what are you so proud of? Didn't you hear what I said? Li Junxing has already fallen. If you're smart, hand over your shares obediently and give up the position of chairman. You're so noisy. Yijin gave her a cold look, her eyes full of mockery. What does Li Junxing's accident have to do with me? I'm sitting in this position because the other shareholders of the company unanimously agreed. Do you want me to give up just because you want me to? Yijin, are you out of your mind? Don't you know why those shareholders agreed? They did it for Li Junxing's sake. Now that Li Junxing has lost his power, do you think you can sit in this position steadily? That's my business. You don't have to worry about it. If there's nothing else, please leave. Yi Zhen, no matter what, you're just a junior. Your father is your elder. Aren't you afraid of retribution for opposing your father like this? Chen Wan's words made Yi Zhen laugh. She had watched Chen Wan's decades of hypocrisy and was really tired of it. Especially when this face might be the enemy who killed her mother, she hated it even more. Madam Chen, I suggest you don't speak. You're talking about retribution. As a mistress, I'm afraid you'll get retribution before me. Youth Yi Zhen, Yi Nanshan, who had been silent all this time, finally spoke. I advise you not to refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit. Old Shen and old Zhang are just doing it for Li Juanqing's sake. You know this much better than I do. If you don't want to make things too ugly, you should obediently give up your position. It's better for you to obediently give up your position. What if I don't? Yi Zhen looked at Yi Nanshan. This was her father, her biological father. Grandpa's words really made sense. Yi Nanshan was indeed not a good person. I have evidence of Li Juanqing's corruption in my hands, Yi Ningyan said coldly, her eyes full of pride. Yi Ningyan said coldly at this time, and her eyes were full of pride. If you don't know what's good for you, I can only follow you and show no mercy. If you're smart, I might let Li Juanqing go. Evidence of Li Juanqing's corruption. Who would believe it? Yi Zhen's gaze swept across Yi Nanshan and the others' faces, and she suddenly smiled. Okay. You can give it a try. Hand the evidence to the prosecutor's office and see if I'm afraid. Yi Zhen, do you want to go all the way? Yi Zhen, Li Juanqing helped you so much before. Why? You're quite ruthless now. I wonder how Li Juanqing will feel if he knows you're so cold-hearted. Chen Wan deliberately provoked Yi Zhen, but Yi Zhen was unmoved. In her heart, she completely believed in Li Juanqing and his character. But looking at Yi Jinghan and Yi Nanshan, they seemed very confident. She didn't know much about officialdom. If they really played any dirty tricks, Li Juanqing wouldn't be able to guard against them. Also, a strong dragon couldn't suppress a local snake. Uncle Li was powerful, but he was still new. Could it be that what happened to Director Zhang and the others last time was really Li Juanqing's goal? She didn't want to think like that, but the current situation made her a little worried. No. Yi Zhen didn't believe it. She didn't want to believe that Li Juanqing was that kind of person. Thinking of this, she immediately regained her composure. Mr. Yi, if you're done, then hurry up and leave. I still have things to do, so I won't accompany you. Yi Zhen, I didn't expect you to be so cold-blooded. Do you really not care about Li Juanqing going to jail? Then let's talk about it after you put him in jail first. Okay, just you wait. Yi Jinghan turned to look at Yi Nanshan. Dad, since sister is so stubborn, there's no need for us to waste any more time. I want to see. After Li Juanqing really goes to jail, what else can you rely on? Yi Nanshan stood up and the group walked out. Yi Zhen believed in Li Juanqing, but she was afraid that Yi Jinghan had really prepared some dirty tricks. Just as Yi Jinghan's hand was about to touch the door handle, she suddenly spoke. Mr. Yi. Yi Jinghan had a triumphant smile on her face. She turned around and looked at Yi Zhen. What's wrong? Are you afraid? Yi Zhen didn't look at her, but at Yi Nanshan. This man had been deceiving his mother's feelings from the beginning. Grandfather and the others had never taken out the agreement back then. Thinking about it, Yi Nanshan thought that the agreement was no longer there, or that it could be invalidated and ignored. With that agreement in her hands, she could totally make Yi Nanshan scram just like that. She could take back the rest of his shares. But now that something like Li Juanqing had happened, she took a deep breath and looked at Yi Nanshan. Mr. Yi, you're doing these things just to protect your position in the general design company. But if you have nothing, will you still have a position? What do you mean? Yijin didn't say anything. She took out her phone and opened her photo album. The original copy of the document was naturally at home, but she had taken a copy yesterday. It seems that Mr. Ye's memory isn't very good, so I have to remind you. Mr. Yi, you once signed an agreement in order to please my mother. I think you still remember the contents of the agreement, right? Yi Nanshan's expression changed. He looked at Yi Jin, and his expression suddenly became a little sinister. Especially when he saw the agreement on the phone, his face turned ashen. Youth Mr. Yi. During your marriage with my mother, you cheated on her several times. According to the agreement, all the property under your name will be transferred to my mother for free. If my mother is gone, then all the property will be transferred to my mother's child. Which is me. She took a deep breath and looked at Yi Nanshan's changed expression with satisfaction. It was good that he admitted it. Now, this agreement is in my hands. Mr. Yi. You still have 40% of the shares of the General Design Company under your name. But according to the agreement, these shares are all mine. Yi Jin. Dream on. Yi Jinghan was furious. She stepped forward and wanted to snatch his phone to see clearly. Yi Jin took a step back and didn't give Yi Jinghan a chance. She just stared at Yi Nanshan. This agreement was notarized back then. Mr. Yi, don't tell me you forgot. Of course, Yi Nanshan remembered, but after Lu Hui gave birth to Yi Jin, they had a good relationship. He coaxed Lu Hui and asked her to destroy the agreement. He clearly saw Lu Hui destroy the agreement. Where was the original agreement now? Could it be that Lu Hui had been acting from the beginning to the end? Damn it, that damned woman. She didn't let him be happy when she was alive, and she still wanted to cause trouble for him after she died. He didn't say anything, but Yi Jin knew what he was thinking. She took a deep breath. She didn't want to give up 40% of the shares, but in the current situation, she had no choice. Mr. Yi. Let's talk about the conditions. What? Give me all the evidence you have related to Li Junxing. And I'll destroy this agreement. How about that? Then how do we know that you'll really destroy it? Then how do I know that you'll give me the real evidence? They didn't believe each other. Who was better than who? Yijin didn't believe that people with bad characters like Yi Nanshan and the others would really hand over the evidence so readily. Yi Nanshan and Chen Wan looked at each other. Yi Jinghan spoke first. Yijin, you don't have to test us here. It's useless for us to want Li Junxing's evidence. If you don't believe me, why don't we make an appointment? We'll give you the evidence of Li Junxing's crime, and you'll give us the agreement. How about that? That's right. Chen Wan echoed. That way, everyone can rest assured. Yi Nanshan didn't say anything. It was obvious that he tacitly agreed with Chen Wan and her daughter's suggestion. Yijin pursed her lips into a straight line. After thinking for a moment, she nodded heavily. Okay, it's a deal. Tomorrow at 10 o'clock in the morning, you guys come to me with the evidence, and I'll bring the agreement and destroy it. Okay. Yi Jinghan was satisfied. She turned to look at Yi Nanshan. He had no objections. She originally wanted to let Yijin give up all the shares in his hands, but now it seemed that she had to keep the 40% in his hands first. As for the rest, she could only plan it slowly. Anyway, as long as the agreement was destroyed, the rest would be easy to discuss. Yi Nanshan and the others left, but Yijin couldn't be at peace. Did Yi Jinghan really have evidence? What kind of evidence would it be? What was the reason for Uncle Li being taken away? Uncle Li, what happened to you? Why haven't you come back yet? Chapter 800. No matter how confused Yijin was, she still had to do what she had to do. Chu Tai came in and said that there was a meeting. Yijin said that she understood. Before going to the meeting, she didn't forget to call Secretary Qin, but no one answered. She called Xiao Zhao again. He was only a driver, and Secretary Qin let him rest today. What could a driver like Xiao Zhao know? Secretary Qin didn't answer the phone. Was he also invited in? Yijin became more and more worried. She was confident yesterday and thought that she could use the agreement to make Yi Nanshan suffer. But in the blink of an eye, Yi Nanshan set her up. She could ignore it, but she couldn't really watch anything happen to Li Junxing. If the company's shares were lost, she could find them again and think of a way. If something happened to Li Junxing, only now did Yijin realize that in her heart, Li Junxing was even more important than the company she had been thinking about. There was an agreement on the coffee table. Yijin sat there and stared at the agreement for a long time. She called Secretary Qin again, but no one answered. She was very worried. She didn't trust Yi Nanshan and the others. She felt that if she really handed over the agreement, Yi Nanshan might not let go. But if she didn't give the agreement to Yi Nanshan, what if he really had evidence? Yijin couldn't sit still and stood up. Staring at Li Junxing's phone on the coffee table, she suddenly remembered something. The Li family couldn't ignore something happened to Li Junxing, right? They had been busy recently, but a few days ago, Li Junxing said that he would take her back to the Li family in Rome City for the festival. It was the Mid-Autumn Festival in a few days. Yijin and Li Junxing had already planned it, but they didn't expect something like this to happen. Thinking of this, Yijin quickly picked up Li Junxing's phone, unlocked the screen, and found the Li family's number. Fortunately, the person who answered the phone was Li Junxing's mother. "Auntie, it's me. I'm Yijin." Yijin's voice was a little anxious. She didn't understand these things in the officialdom, but she was really afraid that Yi Nanshan and the others would play dirty. "Shenzhen. It's you. How have you been?" "Auntie. Li, something happened to Junxing." "What?" Yijin told her what had happened. Her tone was anxious. "Auntie, that's how things are now." "Look, okay, I got it. I'll tell his father." "Auntie, Shenzhen, don't worry too much. I trust my son's character. He won't do anything against the law. As long as he doesn't do anything wrong, no one can touch him." "All right. Auntie, I'll wait for your news." Yijin hung up the phone, her eyes a little red. She looked at Li Junxing's phone and casually flipped it open. There were very few things inside. 2 commonly used social networking apps and a payment app. There was no game, only a photo album placed in the most conspicuous position. She flipped it open and found that there were several photos of her. There were pictures of her sleeping, and another of her standing in the kitchen, cooking. There was also a photo of her walking out of the company building. When did he take it? Yizhen was really curious. She put down her phone and felt like crying. "Li Junxing, I hope you're really okay." Yizhen had been waiting for Mother Li's call. As he waited, he actually fell asleep on the sofa. In a daze, she felt herself being picked up by someone. That familiar embrace made her unable to wake up for a moment, and she rubbed herself against his chest. When her body was placed on the bed, the different feeling made her eyes widen. Uncle Li. Li Junxing, who was standing in front of her, still had the same demeanor. Other than some stubble on his chin, he looked no different from before. She was afraid that she had seen wrongly, so she couldn't help but look him up and down again. She wanted to see if he had lost a strand of hair. Was there anything wrong with his body? Yes. Li Junxing nodded and looked at Yizhen, who looked like she was about to wake up. "You're awake. Uncle Li." Are you okay? When Yijin saw Li Junxing, she instantly sobered up. She suddenly got up and threw herself into his arms, hugging him tightly. It's really great that you're fine. That's great. Li Junxing enjoyed Yijin throwing herself into his arms. He tightened his arms and easily hugged her body in his arms. Yes. I'm fine. Are you really fine? Did they do anything to you when they took you away? Have you suffered any hardships? Did you have a good rest? You definitely didn't rest well there. Hurry up and rest. By the way, the food there isn't good either. Are you hungry? I'll go cook for you. Xinjin. She said a lot in one breath. Li Junxing didn't even have a chance to answer her. Seeing that she was about to jump out of his arms, he couldn't help but hug her waist again, not letting her leave again. I'm fine, I'm really fine. Look at me. Aren't I fine? Look carefully. Yijin finally calmed down a little. His heart was fluttering, but now it returned to its original place. You scared me to death. Yijin buried her face in his chest. She lowered her head, so he couldn't see her appearance clearly. However, he could hear the trembling in her voice. I'm sorry, you must be scared, right? Don't worry, I'm fine. I was really scared to death by you. Yijin punched him on the shoulder. I was so afraid that something would happen to you. She couldn't continue. Her worries for the day were really enough for her. All right. I'm fine. Li Junxing kissed the top of her head, lifted her chin, looked at her teary eyes, and lowered his head to kiss her forehead. I'm fine. What exactly is going on? Yijin bit her lip. She was really worried. Do you know that my stepsister actually said that she has evidence of you taking bribes? I don't believe it at all. She's just teasing you. Li Junxing pulled her hand and squeezed it hard in his palm. How could she have evidence of me? There were so many people who wanted to find dirt on him and drag him down. People like Yi Ningen couldn't even be seen in public. I knew it. Yijin actually believed Li Junxing in her heart, but she was too worried. You should tell me again. I have to think about how to deal with her. You don't know, but she's been too much these past 2 days. What's wrong? Does she think that she can bully you just because I've fallen from power? If Yi Ningen really had such thoughts, he really wanted to say that she was too naive. Putting aside the fact that he was reliable and never left anyone with anything to hold against him. Even in the unlikely event that he was framed and pulled down from his high horse, he would make arrangements for Yijin before that happened. I didn't bully you. Yijin seemed to have thought of something. She pulled his hand and led him outside. The agreement on the coffee table was still there. She showed it to Li Junxing. I only found out the day before yesterday that my dad actually signed such an agreement back then. After your accident this time, Yi Ningen thought that I'd lost my backer and wanted me to give up my position to my dad. I refused. She said that she had evidence of you taking bribes. I didn't believe it, but she made it sound so real. I was afraid that they would use some despicable trick to trick you. You've already promised my dad. Destroy this agreement and give me all the evidence he has against you. Li Junxing looked at her and immediately understood her plan. If I hadn't come back, would you really have used this to exchange? Otherwise? Yijin bit her lip, her eyes a little aggrieved. I can't really watch you go to jail. You still said that you believed me. If you really believed me, you would know that it's impossible for anyone to use me against me. Yijin hugged Li Junxing tightly and rubbed her face against his chest. She looked satisfied. Yes, Uncle Li, I should have believed you. Thank you for your trust. Li Junxing looked at the agreement. I think their lives are too light. You should find something for them to do. And what did he mean? Leave this to Lawyer Tang. I'll ask your grandfather later. If you really want to sue, it's better for your grandfather to do it. Why? Yijin looked puzzled. I've already talked to Lawyer Tang. Silly girl. Li Junqing pinched her face gently. No matter what, Yi Nanshan is your father. If you sue your father as a daughter, your reputation won't be good in the future. It was his idea to sue you first this time. Others will only say that he's not good. But if you go and sue him, there will always be some Dao protectors who will condemn you in both word and writing. I'm not afraid. Yijin's expression was firm. I'm not afraid of them talking about me at all. My father did such a thing. I can't wait to sever my father-daughter relationship with him. It's just a reputation. But I don't want to. Li Juanqing's expression was gentle. Xinjin, I don't want you to carry that kind of reputation. That's not necessary. Uncle Li, Yijin seemed to understand his concerns, although she felt that there was no need for that at all. But the fact that he put himself in her shoes and thought for her still made her feel extremely touched. All right. I don't want to talk about this anymore. Li Junqing pulled her hand and sat down. From now on, trust me. I'll take care of everything. You don't have to panic. Your father has no real power other than shares. He can't do anything for a while. So, don't worry about those things for now. Just leave it to me. Okay. With him around, she was always extremely at ease. She reached out to hug him again. She only felt that hugging him like this, even if they didn't do anything, was enough to make her satisfied. However, as if she had thought of something, her gaze fell on the agreement. She looked up at Li Junqing and suddenly smiled. Uncle Li, I still have a business deal. What? I won't tell you. Naughty. Li Junqing went to kiss her again. Seeing that she was only dodging but unwilling to speak, he couldn't help but reach out and scratch her under her armpit a few times. Yijin laughed and her body curled up into a ball. Li Junqing didn't stop and scratched her until she almost lost her strength from laughing. In the end, she helplessly hooked her arms around his neck and softly begged for mercy. Don't come, don't come. I'll say. Yijin looked at the agreement, her eyes full of slyness. Tomorrow, I'm still going to give this agreement to him. She blinked, and Li Junqing almost instantly understood what she meant. He gently tapped the tip of her nose. You. The little girl was really smart. She used the other person's own way to counter him. Uncle Li, tomorrow, take the original copy of this agreement and continue to look for my grandfather. As for the agreement that my father wants, I will naturally give it to him. Li Junqing looked at the light in her eyes and was tempted. He lowered his head and kissed her lips again. You're really a vixen. When Yijin heard this, she reached out and hooked her arm around his neck. Yes, not only is she a vixen, but she's also a vixen who specializes in sucking your blood and eating your flesh. In that case, I can only wash myself clean and let you enjoy me. As Li Junqing spoke, he picked her up and went to the room again. For the first time, Yijin felt refreshed after being squeezed by Li Junqing. Uncle Li was fine and had returned safely. To her, this was the best news. The next day, Li Junqing woke up and had breakfast with her. After kissing her on the lips, he went out. When he left, he took the agreement with him. As for Yijin, after finishing his meal, he picked up the other agreement and left the room. At 10 o'clock, Yi Nanshan's family of 3 arrived on time. However, they were in a neat formation, appearing together every time. Oh, except for Yi Jinhao, who was still in school. Yijin didn't have the time to be polite with Yi Nanshan's family. She looked up at him with a worried expression. Did you bring the evidence you mentioned? Of course I brought it. Yi Ningyan took a step forward with a document bag in her hand. She looked at Yijin with an unfriendly gaze. What about you? Where's the agreement? Here. Yijin waved the agreement in her hand, but she quickly retracted her hand and put the agreement behind her. How do I know that the evidence you mentioned is real? If I give it to you, you'll naturally know. What if you have a copy of me? You have to know that I only have one copy of the agreement. If I really give it to you, I won't have it anymore. As long as you hand over the agreement, we will naturally give you the evidence. This matter is a little difficult. Yijin sighed and clenched the agreement in her hand. She seemed to be very conflicted and suspicious. Then what do you want? Yijin bit her lip and looked conflicted. After thinking for a moment, she suddenly looked up at the three people in front of her. How about this, we sign a new agreement. Dad, I will give this agreement to you. After you accept this agreement, you will forever be a shareholder of the company, not the chairman. In your dreams. With so many shares in hand, Yi Nanshan's plan was to destroy the agreement and regain control of the company. If he signed another agreement, wouldn't he be in a passive position again? If that's the case, then there's nothing to talk about. Yijin looked regretful. Dad, you really don't trust this daughter of yours at all. Ever since they shed all pretense of cordiality, this was the first time she called him Dad. However, it was so sarcastic and meaningful. Yi Nanshan's expression was ugly, but Yijin sighed again. Dad, you really can't blame me for not trusting you. What if you take the agreement, then turn around and use the shares in your hand to deal with me? Who do I look for? Yijin, don't confuse me. Yi Ningyan took a step forward and stood still. The point today is not to sign another agreement, but to give us the previous agreement, and we will hand over the evidence of Li Juanxing's crime to you. Why is it that when it comes to you, you want us to sign another agreement for you? What's the reason? It was a pity that the people on the other side didn't get involved. Yijin sighed in her heart, but there was no trace of it on her face. What reason? You have the evidence, and I will give you the agreement. A one-to-one exchange. But speaking of which, 40% of the shares isn't child's play. I have to be worried that you will bite back at me in the future, right? Enough. Yi Nanshan couldn't take it anymore. You've been going around in circles for so long. Do you still want Li Juanxing's criminal record? Yes, of course I want it. Yijin seemed very hesitant as he stood up. His hand was still tightly gripping the agreement. She walked in front of Yi Ningyan. Come, let's exchange together. Yi Ningyan looked at her and began to become impatient. She handed over the evidence in her hand and reached out her other hand to Yijin. Yijin imitated her actions and was about to reach out her hand. However, she had just handed out the document in her hand when she suddenly retracted her hand. No. I regret it. Yi Nanshan and the other two looked at her together, their eyes filled with anger. Yijin, what do you mean? I don't mean anything. Yijin took a step back and put away the agreement in her arms. What I mean is, I don't plan to save Li Juanxing anymore. Yi Nanshan's family of three looked at her in disbelief. Yijin, do you know what you're saying? I know. Yijin nodded with a calm expression. Men can be relied on, and sows can climb trees. You were the one who taught me this, Dad. Back then, you could even sign such an agreement in order to coax your mother to work for you and for the company. Now, you can even sue your own daughter for the shares. Tell me, why should I trust men? With this agreement, I can snatch the entire company and make it mine. At that time, I will have money and a company. Will I be afraid of not having a man? Dad, don't you think so? Yi Nanshan was so angry that his whole body trembled. He pointed at Yijin as if he was looking at a bug. Rebellious girl, you rebellious girl. Did you do it on purpose? Dad, how can you say that? In the end, isn't this the lesson you taught me? As Yijin spoke, she hugged the document in her hand tightly. If I really listened to you and gave you the agreement. Let's not talk about whether your evidence is useful or not. Even if it's useful, it's fine. Why should I use such a huge benefit to exchange for a man? This man is your backer. Chen Wan didn't believe that she wouldn't panic. Don't you think about it. If your backer falls, who will give you face? The company will fall in your hands sooner or later. That's my business. I don't need to trouble Miss Chin. As Yijin spoke, she took a step back again. Okay, I still have things to do. You guys can leave. Yi Nanshan's chest was still heaving violently, but Yi Ningen couldn't care less about Yi Nanshan. She looked at the document in Yijin's hand and rushed towards her without thinking, as if she was going to snatch it. However, before her hand could touch Yijin's body, it was caught. Chapter 801. Yizhen was surprised to see Li Junqing appear. He didn't even notice the word fiancé in his words. Chen Wan and Yi Nanshan heard it. Both of them were angry at Yizhen for going back on his word. Naturally, no one stopped Yi Jinghan from snatching the agreement. But where did this Li Junqing suddenly come from? Yi Jinghan's hand hurt from his grip. What shocked her even more was Li Junqing's words just now. Fiancé. How was that possible? Are they already engaged? Yi Jinghan tried to pull her hand back, but found that the man who looked extremely elegant on the outside had a cold expression on his face. He looked gloomy and sharp. She swallowed her saliva. She was clearly very scared, but she didn't forget to insult Yijin. Mayor Li, you said she's your fiancé. When Yijin heard the word fiancé, he finally realized what it meant. When did she become his fiancé? Yi Jinghan saw Yijin's reaction and thought she was feeling guilty. She sneered. Mayor Li, you came a few minutes late. You probably didn't hear my good sister's wonderful words. Li Junqing pursed his lips into a straight line, and the strength in his hand almost crushed Yi Jinghan's wrist. What do you want to say? If you came a few minutes earlier, you would have heard that my sister is with you because of your identity. Oh. Li Junqing raised his eyebrows. What identity? Of course it's the mayor's identity. Yi Jinghan glared at Yijin, wanting her to suffer. Do you know what she just said? She said that a man can be trusted and a sow can climb a tree. This means that she doesn't believe you at all. Also, Yi Jinghan pointed at Yijin, and there was a flash of resentment in her eyes. Do you think she really loves you? She doesn't love you at all. She's just using you and your identity. Yi Jinghan's fingertips fell and pointed at the agreement in Yijin's hand that he hadn't had time to snatch away. Do you know that we asked her to use some shares in exchange for your criminal evidence, but she refused? Are you sure you want to be with such a woman who doesn't love you? Li Junqing seemed to be stunned by Yi Jinghan's words, and the strength in his hand also relaxed a little. Yi Yinghan took advantage of the victory to pursue and did not forget to continue to make things difficult for Li Junqing. You want to marry her, but she would rather choose property. Do you dare to marry such a woman? However, Li Junqing suddenly let go of his hand at this moment. With a light push, Yi Ningen's body took a few steps back. She finally stabilized her body and looked at Li Junqing in shock. Mayor Li Junqing took a few steps forward and walked in front of Yi Ningen. Seriously speaking, Li Junqing, who was only one. 8 meters tall, wasn't particularly tall. He had the kind of figure that looked skinny in clothes and fleshy when undressed. However, he had been in a high position for many years. Even when he was smiling faintly, his aura was still very imposing. At this time, he stared at Yi Ningen coldly. That kind of gaze made her tremble instinctively. She felt as if something was wrong. You mean, evidence of my crime? What kind of evidence is it? Yi Ningen's face suddenly turned white. Her legs went weak and she almost fell to the ground. Say it. What kind of criminal evidence? I'm really curious. No. No. You heard wrong. Now that Yi Ningen saw Li Junxing come out, what else didn't she understand? Now that Li Junxing appeared here, didn't it mean that he was fine? Since he was fine, then what she said just now, wasn't it? Yi Ningen wasn't the only one who reacted to this sudden change. Yi Nanshan and Chen Wan also reacted. The two of them were so shocked that they even forgot to go forward and pull Yi Ningen away. Uncle Li, she's right. She has evidence of you accepting bribes. Yijin seemed to say very unintentionally, Uncle Li, my good sister also said that when you fall, I won't have anyone to rely on. Oh. Li Junxing raised his eyebrows lightly. I wonder how you plan to make me fall. Mayor Li, the first to react was Yi Nanshan. He took a few steps forward and walked in front of Yi Ningen, pulling her behind him. At this time, he finally understood that Li Junxing was standing up for Yijin. Mayor Li, my daughter is immature and spouting nonsense. Don't lower yourself to her level. Immature. Li Junxing chuckled. You're already an adult. Don't you know what you can say and what you can't say? Do you think you can casually say the words criminal evidence? Mayor Li, that's good. Since you think that you have evidence of my crime, then I naturally have to investigate it thoroughly to prove my innocence. Mayor Li. It's a misunderstanding. This is all a misunderstanding. I don't think this is a misunderstanding. As Li Junxing spoke, he took out his phone. It seems that I can only call Director Chin and let him deal with this matter. I really haven't asked how the crime of slander will be judged. No, Mayor Li. This is really a misunderstanding. Yi Nanshan was anxious. As he spoke, he couldn't help but glare at Yijin. Damn girl, you're actually just standing there and watching. Aren't you going to help say a few good words? Chen Wan smiled and took 2 steps forward, her gaze landing on Li Junxing's face. There was a flash of unwillingness in her eyes. Why did such a high-quality man end up benefiting that little b*tch, Yijin? She was really too hateful. Mayor Li, my daughter is young and immature. She was tricked by someone and said a few nonsense words. How can it be considered slander? To be honest, the person who seduced my daughter to say these words is the one who should be punished. Yijin simply wanted to laugh. It had already come to this. This Chen Wan didn't forget to slander her. That was really enough. Auntie, what do you mean by that? You mean that Ningen's words are nonsense? TSK, but I clearly heard her say that she has evidence of Uncle Li accepting bribes. Yesterday, she was still so confident and even wanted me to exchange the company's shares. How did it become nonsense now? Yijin. Chen Wan glared at Yijin. Her eyes seemed to be stained with poison. Why do you have to sow discord here? In fact, didn't you do it on purpose? Speaking of which, how much of your thoughts are true? But you're just using him. Mayor Li is a good person. I won't argue with you. Otherwise, how can someone like you, who values money more than life, be worthy of Mayor Li? If I don't deserve him, who does? Yi Ningen. Yijin smiled. She openly held the agreement in her hands and walked in front of Li Junxing. You heard them. They said that I used you. Yes. I heard them. It was completely different from when he was facing Yiningen. Li Junxing only felt his heart warm when he saw her arrogant little face. Are you angry? I'm not angry. Why should I be angry? Did you see that? Yizhen turned to face Chenwan. Uncle Li, he's not angry. I won't be angry with you. Li Junxing held her waist with one hand and leaned over to kiss her cheek. You know, it's my honor to be used by you. I remember I taught you before. I said, if a person can be used, it means that this person has value. It's not worth being angry, right? Yes. I remember it all. Yizhen did it on purpose. She looked at Yiningen with a provocative smile in her eyes. Uncle Li, I'm really sorry. I might still have to use you in the future. Welcome. Li Junxing gently tapped the tip of her nose. You can use me at will. Yiningen stood behind her parents and looked at the scene in front of her. She felt a fire burning in her heart. She didn't want to let it go just like that. She definitely couldn't let it go just like that. She was emotional at this moment, and no one cared. On the other hand, Chenwan suddenly realized something when she saw the situation between Li Junxing and Yizhen. She gave Yi Nanshan a look. She had said what she wanted to say. If Li Junxing really wanted to deal with them, she was afraid. Yi Nanshan, who had never liked Yizhen, quickly reacted from Chenwan's gaze. He thought of another thing. He didn't know that Li Junxing could be so concerned about Yizhen before. Now it seemed that he had been too rash and too eager. There was no need to fall out with Yizhen at all. This way, he would still have a son-in-law who would be the mayor. When that time came, who would dare to give him a hard time? Wouldn't he be able to do whatever he wanted in the entire Qing city? Yi Nanshan was indeed a smart person. In the shortest time possible, he had thought of the most advantageous position for him. What was the previous agreement? As long as there was this line, he didn't care about those small problems at all. Instead, it could bring greater benefits to the company and him. It was a miscalculation. But it didn't matter. He could make up for it now. Thinking of this, Yi Nanshan quickly calmed down the emotions on his face. He changed his expression so quickly that Yizhen, who had been watching from the side, was very surprised. Merely, Yi Nanshan walked forward and looked at Yizhen and Li Junxing. I see that you and Jinjin have such a good relationship. Why don't you arrange for us to visit your father and mother sometime? It'll also be good for the elders on both sides to decide on your marriage. How about it? Engagement? Li Junxing raised his eyebrows. I'm engaged to Jinjin. Yes. Yi Nanshan nodded. Didn't you say that she's your fiancé? But you guys don't have a name or a share now. Not many people in Qing City even know that you guys are together. How can this be? Since it's an engagement, of course, we have to meet both parents and settle this matter. Really? The corners of Li Junxing's lips curled up. He looked at Yi Nanshan and could almost see through his thoughts at a glance. Then, Uncle Yi, do you think that you can preside over Jinjin's marriage with me as Jinjin's father? Of course. Otherwise, I wouldn't have married Jinjin to you. Ha! Li Junxing chuckled and looked at Yi Nanshan. His expression suddenly changed. Are you worthy? Chapter 802. Yi Nanshan's face turned pale. He stood there in a daze and looked at Li Junxing. He had never thought that one day he would be criticized so mercilessly by a junior. He saw Yizhen standing behind Li Junxing, as if he had finally found a reason for himself. I'm not qualified. I'm her father. You're her father. Li Junxing seemed to have heard a joke. A father who sued her in court. A father who doesn't care about his daughter at all. The ridicule in his eyes was too obvious. Yi Nanshan's face was very ugly. That's because she was unfilial first. If I have a father like you, then I don't mind being unfilial. He refused to come to his senses. Li Junxing didn't want to talk to Yi Nanshan at all. Mr. Yi, if there's nothing else, please leave. This is my fiancé's office. And she obviously doesn't want to see you. Mayor Li, I know you're a high-ranking official, but that doesn't mean you have the right to interfere in other people's private affairs. Let's not talk about the fact that Yijin hasn't married you yet. I still have a share in this company. Why can't I stand here? You are indeed qualified. Li Junxing answered on behalf of Yijin, you can continue to stay, but Miss Yi said that she has evidence of me. I don't think we should let this matter go so easily. We have to investigate it thoroughly, right? Mr. Yi. Or do you want me to call you now? Chen Wan gritted her teeth so hard that they almost shattered. She couldn't help but take a few steps forward, wanting to argue with Li Junxing. Yi Ningyan held her hand and then Yi Nanshan's hand. Dad, Mom. Let's go first. Li Junxing came out, which meant that he was fine. Then, what to do next would have to be discussed again. At this stage, the most important thing was to deal with the agreement in Yijin's hands. Yi Nanshan didn't want to leave. He hadn't gotten the agreement back. However, he also knew that Li Junxing was here. Just now, they had given Li Junxing a hold on them. Now was not the time to use brute force, he could only look for another opportunity. After exiting the shogi company, Chen Wan almost exploded as soon as she went downstairs. Yi Nanshan, you're really good. You actually dared to sign such an agreement. Is everything okay now? You want to give all your wealth to someone else? You're really something. Chen Wan had said the same thing the day before after she found out about the agreement. Now that she mentioned it again, Yi Nanshan was very impatient. He didn't want to listen at all. Chen Wan felt that it wasn't enough. You've contributed to the company for so many years. Why should you give all your shares to that little girl? What qualifications did she have? Are you out of your mind? Yes. Dad, you're too impulsive. Enough. Yi Nanshan didn't want to listen anymore. What else is there to say? What's the point of repeating it over and over? Boring. Then why don't you take back the agreement? Chen Wan was furious. In my opinion, you still love that dead woman. Otherwise, why would they sign such an agreement? In vain, I suffered so many grievances in order to follow you. Now that things are better, I don't even have a way to live. Forget about me. But what did Ning Han do wrong? What did Jian Hao do wrong? Where did you put them? Ha! Tell me, tell me. She pushed Yi Nanshan as she spoke. Yi Nanshan was already impatient. He couldn't take it anymore and waved her hand away. Chen Wan, who was wearing high heels, was caught off guard. She took 2 steps back and lost her balance, falling on the stairs. She screamed and immediately jumped up. Yi Nanshan, how dare you push me? How dare you push me? You ungrateful bastard. You, enough. Yi Nanshan looked at her shrewish behavior and then at the people passing by looking at them from time to time. You've made enough noise. Haven't you embarrassed yourself enough? Chen Wan also came to at this moment and stood up angrily. The 3 of them lowered their heads and quickly got into Yi Nanshan's car. Yi Nanshan sat in the car, not in a hurry to start it. Deep down, he was very depressed. He thought back to the time when he had to sign the agreement in order to make Lu Hui trust him. After all, he really needed Lu Hui's ability and connections back then. Lu Manjiang was a professor in the Lu family. The Lu family had a lot of connections that he usually couldn't reach. Although he had signed the agreement, he was absolutely unwilling to hand over the shares in his hands to others. Why? Lu Hui had been dead for so long. The company had grown because of his hard work. When Yi Nanshan thought about this, he didn't think that without Lu Hui's hard work and connections, who would know that he came from a small county? What do you think we should do? You don't want me to make a fuss. What do you think we should do? Chen Wan couldn't calm down. Yi Nanshan became more and more impatient. Even if we take away the shares, I still have a lot of money under my name. I won't starve you to death. If you don't like me, we can divorce. You can go find another man. Okay, Yi Nanshan, what are you talking about? Let me tell you, you want to get rid of me? No way. Dad. Mom. Stop arguing. Yi Ningen was already annoyed. Now that they were arguing, she was even more annoyed. If you have time to argue here, why don't you think about how to destroy the agreement or how to keep our shares? Previously, she had wanted to say that Lu Hui was unconscious before she died and take all of Yizhen's shares. But now, it seemed that it would be difficult to keep Yi Nanshan's shares, let alone Yizhen's shares. What was even more hateful was that damn Yizhen had hooked up with a good man like Li Junxing. Yizhen had taken advantage of all the good things. It was really enough. How do we solve it? How? Chen Wan glared at Yi Nanshan with dissatisfaction. If your dad hadn't been in a daze and signed that agreement, how could there be so many problems after that? Mom. Stop talking, okay? Yizhen saw that Yi Nanshan was on the verge of exploding and quickly stopped her from continuing. Stop talking. Dad is already suffering enough. I said, the most important thing now is to solve the problem. Yi Nanshan looked at his daughter and finally felt a little more considerate. He thought for a moment and said, let's go find Lawyer Ding first and talk to him about this. Let's see what he has to say. Dad, that's what I mean too. Yi Ningen was actually very annoyed, but she knew that at times like this, she had to be even more calm. Let's go find Lawyer Ding first. It's best if we can find an explanation that the agreement is invalid. As for the rest, we'll talk about it later. Okay. Ningen is still the sensible one. Yi Nanshan's words attracted Chen Wan's attention, but when she thought that her daughter was more likable to Yi Nanshan than that little b*tch, Yizhen, she more or less relaxed. In the office, Yizhen looked at Li Junxing. Her eyes were curved and there was a faint smile on her face. Uncle Li, aren't you going to work today? No. Li Junxing hugged her waist and led the two of them to sit in the spacious office chair. I was just wronged and I'm depressed. I need some time to calm down. Pfft, Yizhen couldn't help but laugh out loud. Uncle Li, are you kidding me? She had known him for a long time, so she could roughly guess his personality. Things like being depressed weren't suitable for him at all. Uncle Li, you're so depressed, yet you still have time to come here to watch my family ethics drama. You don't know, do you? Li Junxing leaned over and kissed her red lips. It's because I'm depressed, so I came here to find comfort. As he spoke, his hand naughtily reached into the hem of her clothes. Yizhen panicked and quickly grabbed his hand. Stop fooling around. This is the office. I know. Li Junxing's lips curled up, and this smile unexpectedly revealed a bit of evil. Of course I know this is the office. However, I haven't tried doing it in the office. You're crazy. No, I just can't help it. Li Junxing's lips were close to her ear. You know, if it's my office, I naturally can't mess around, but it should be fine here. Uncle Li, Yijin wanted to refuse, but looking at Li Junxing, the emotions in his eyes were too obvious. She blushed a little. Thinking that he had just come out, she didn't refuse too thoroughly, but she still had to have a bottom line. There's a lounge next to it, this was the bottom line. If she really did it here, she would have a shadow in the future. Li Junxing knew that she was thin-skinned, so he didn't force her. There would always be a chance in the future. He picked her up and strode to the lounge. Of course, he didn't forget to lock the door. Yijin didn't forget to ask Chu Tei to push the meeting to the afternoon. When she hung up, she was still a little embarrassed. Was this considered depravity? The bed in the lounge was changed by Yijin after she became the chairman. She really didn't want to use something that Yi Nanshan had used. The bedding had also been changed from white to light blue. At this moment, she was naked, and the sky blue blanket barely covered half of her waist. Her entire body exuded a lazy and sexy vibe. Li Junxing looked at her kitten-like appearance and loved her very much. He picked up her hand and kissed it. One more time. No. Yijin shook her head and sat up. Looking at the marks on her body, she blushed a little. There's still a meeting in the afternoon. There's still a lot of work to deal with. She turned around and looked at Li Junxing, who had stood up at the same time. She suddenly became serious. Uncle Li, has your matter really been resolved? Are you all right? Worried about me? Li Junxing reached out to hug her, but he saw that she quickly got out of bed and grabbed the clothes beside her to put them on. Don't worry, I'm fine. What exactly happened? How did Yi Ningen have your evidence? She did have evidence, but it was made up by herself. Li Junxing thought of what had happened before, and his expression was a little cold. Chapter 803. After all, such a big thing has happened. The higher-ups will definitely investigate it thoroughly. After receiving the report, they will naturally call me for questioning. Yi Ningen didn't just report Li Junxing. No one knew what she was thinking, but she actually got someone to bribe the family of a senior management member in the factory. She got that person to agree to testify that he had given Li Junxing a gift. That person's words were very convincing, and there was evidence. Yijin frowned and couldn't help but ask, then why are you fine? I can only say that whether it's your parents or your sister, they don't know me well. Ever since Li Junxing could remember, he had been educated by his father and grandfather. He had wanted to walk down this path. He knew very well that even if you took a wrong step on this path, it would be a big taboo. Therefore, from the moment he started working at his first unit, he had been very careful about his image and had never left any evidence for himself. If the family of the management wanted to accuse him, they had to have evidence. When did he give the gift? Where did he give it? What did he give it? Was it right? Secretary Chin kept a record of his daily routine. How could it be designed by someone as clumsy as Yi Ningen? It's good that you're fine. Yijin had already put on her clothes. But, since you know it was Yi Ningen who did it, why didn't you get someone to arrest her? If this was in ancient times, it would be slandering an official of the imperial court and he would be beaten. Your sister has some brains. She didn't show up from beginning to end. Li Junxing had thought that it was because he had stopped another company from opening a factory in Qing City last time and attracted the family's revenge. After all, at his position, there were many people who wanted to step on him. If he hadn't heard from Yijin that Yi Ningen had evidence in her hands, he would have asked Secretary Chin to investigate who was stirring up trouble behind the scenes. Then we can't do anything to her. Why did Yijin feel so unhappy? How could that be? Li Junxing grabbed her hand and pulled her back to the bed to sit down. There are many ways to deal with your sister. The simplest way is for me to help you snatch the shares from your father. Losing the shares of the shogi company means losing the identity of the eldest daughter of the Yi family. To your sister, that's the biggest punishment. That was true. Yi Ningen may have been too unhappy in the past 10 years. Ever since she followed Qin Wan and married into the Yi family, she went around proclaiming that she was the eldest daughter of the Yi family. She was really shameless. She didn't even think about it. Her mother was at most a mistress, and her identity on the surface was to follow the mistress into the Yi family. Her surname was originally Qin, but she later changed it to Yi. This was the greatest humiliation for Yi Ningen. Maybe people care more about something when they have nothing. Why does Yi Ningen hate her so much? Most of the reason was because he felt that if it wasn't for her, he would be the legitimate eldest miss of the Yi family. The mother and daughter were disgusted. They didn't even think about it. If it wasn't for Lu Hui, the shogi company wouldn't even exist. How could they be the eldest daughter of the Yi family? Uncle Li, don't worry. I will get all of Yi Nanshan's shares. Chapter 804. Then let them come. I'm not afraid. Yi Zhen was really not afraid. If it were before, she might have been a little nervous. However, ever since she got together with Li Junxing, she had a lot more confidence than before. She always felt that no matter what happened, Li Junxing would stand behind her. It's better to be careful. To be able to come up with such a vicious trick to frame him, he would probably come up with an even more vicious way to deal with Yi Zhen in the future. From the looks of it, should he hire 2 more people to protect Yi Zhen? He had this thought in his heart, but he also knew that Yi Zhen would probably not agree. He had spent a lot of effort to persuade her to bring Zhao Li along. As expected, as soon as he mentioned it, Yi Zhen objected. It's not that exaggerated. I don't believe they dare to do anything in broad daylight. It's better to be safe than sorry. Li Junxing squeezed her palm. Safety comes first. Uncle Li, don't worry. If the matter of reporting Yi Nanshan really comes to fruition, if he can really leave the family without any money, what will Yi Ningen do bad things with? Yi Zhen was still very optimistic. The heavens were watching what people did. There was a cost to doing bad things. Back then, Yi Nanshan thought that he could coax Lu Hui to work for him by signing an agreement. However, he didn't know that many years later, that agreement could also ruin his reputation and make him lose everything. Li Junxing looked at Yi Zhen and didn't remind this innocent little girl. Some people's viciousness was deep in their bones. Just look at the fact that Yi Nanshan was willing to sign the agreement back then. In order to stabilize Lu Hui, he had endured for so many years. It could be seen that this person was definitely not what he appeared to be. The little girl was still too inexperienced and lacked some understanding of human nature. In less than a minute, several possible methods that Yi Nanshan might have flashed through his mind, as well as what Qin Wan and her mother might have done. He hugged his little girl tightly and didn't remind her. He would protect her anyway. He wouldn't let others hurt her. It would be good if she could really learn a lesson. It would save her the trouble of trusting others too much in the future. It would not be good for her. He hoped that his little girl could always be innocent, but he also hoped that his little girl could be a little scheming and learn to protect herself. This was the first time he had such complicated emotions. Now that he thought about it, it really made him feel very subtle. Although it was already late autumn, this small room was very warm. Being hugged by him, Yi Zhen couldn't take it anymore. Hot. Moving away from his embrace, Yi Zhen patted her slightly red little face. Alright, I really have to go, or else I'll have to work overtime today. Do you need my help? No need. Yijin turned around to open the door to the lounge. Suddenly, he paused and said, "By the way, come with me to Grandpa's house after work." What do you mean, Hen? If you bring that agreement to my grandpa's house today and let him be the plaintiff, my grandpa will definitely suspect our relationship. Since he already suspects it, let him know. As Yijin spoke, his voice became softer. The two of them were so close now, but grandpa still didn't know. If I go tonight, my grandfather will probably talk about it for a long time. Don't worry, your grandfather must be very satisfied with me. What a big face. Yijin's eyes were filled with obvious mockery. She squinted at him. Maybe my grandfather thinks that you're too old for me. Li Junxing narrowed his eyes, and a dangerous light flashed in them. I'm too old. Isn't that so? Yijin raised her voice. There's a generation gap when you're 3 years old. There's a generation gap between us. If it's not because you're too old, then what is it? Li Junxing got up from the bed. Ignoring the fact that he wasn't dressed yet, he walked directly in front of Yijin. I'm too old. He pinched her hand that was pulling the door open and locked it with his other hand. He successfully pressed her against the door. His wheat-colored chest was right in front of her. Yijin's legs, which had been weak just now, suddenly felt that she couldn't stand still anymore. It looks like Jinjin isn't satisfied with my performance just now. No. Yijin's legs were still weak. Her body was tightly pressed against the door, and her head was shaking like a rattle drum. Are you sure? Li Junxing's body moved forward, and Yijin was so suppressed that she couldn't move. Why do I feel like you're doubting my ability? Since that's the case, I naturally have to prove it to you. Uncle Li, control yourself. Yijin cleared her throat. Her voice was trembling. From a health point of view, there's only a future if you control yourself. Li Junxing's expression became more and more interesting. So, you're really worried that I won't be able to give you happiness in the future? No. Yijin was scared to death. She was only thinking about how to escape. The phone in Li Junxing's pocket rang. Yijin made use of this time to push him and quickly ran out. Li Junxing looked at her fleeing figure and shook his head helplessly and dotingly. When he took out his phone and saw the phone number on it, his face darkened. Not many people in the company knew about the confrontation between Yijin and Yi Nanshan. However, everyone saw that Yi Nanshan's family of 3 came looking for them angrily, but left with even more ugly expressions. This situation was clearly like a signal, letting others know that Yijin and Yi Nanshan should have won between Yijin and Yi Nanshan. As a result, during the afternoon meeting, the department managers who had been promoted by Yi Nanshan did not dare to speak out against Yijin. Yijin was very satisfied with this change. Although she wasn't afraid of people stirring up trouble, she hoped that the people in the company could work together. However, she was in a good mood. When she got into the car, the corners of her lips were still curled up. What's wrong? Are you in a good mood? Li Junxing put on his clothes and returned to his beast in human clothing appearance. Yijin's back was slightly sore, but she didn't want to argue with him. Not bad. Is there anything good? There is. There were 2 pending plans that had already been finalized. We should be able to sign the contract in 2 days. Just this? Yes. Yijin nodded. Since I snatched the position of chairman, of course I hope that I can perform well. Otherwise, won't those people laugh at me? I believe in you. Li Junxing's words made Yijin raise the corners of her lips. She moved her face closer to him. Uncle Li, I thank you for your trust. However, you should think about how to make my grandfather accept you. Then what will you do if your grandfather doesn't accept me? Yijin bit her lip and her face turned bitter. Relationships without the blessings of family members won't be happy. Since my grandfather doesn't accept you, then I can only cut off my love. I'll cut all ties with you. As soon as she said this, Li Junxing pinched her face. Yizhen felt the pain and looked at Li Junxing with some resentment. He hugged her waist, and the distance between the two of them was less than 5 centimeters. Yizhen, let me tell you, even if the whole world opposes us being together, don't even think about cutting all ties with me. He had always been gentle. Yizhen was a little stunned when he suddenly put on such a cold and serious face. She just stared at him blankly. Did you hear me? Li Junxing pinched her palm hard. Yizhen bit her lip and had no choice but to nod. I heard you. Be good. Li Junxing kissed the corner of her lips before sitting back in his seat. Yizhen pursed her lips and looked at Li Junxing. Did he treat her like a child? He was really too much. However, why was there an inexplicable sweetness in her heart? After Lu Manjiang found out about Li Junxing's intentions this morning, he was very grateful. He and Lu Zhishuan had indeed neglected this point before. If Yizhen went to sue Yi Nanshan, it would inevitably cause gossip. Even if Yi Nanshan was in the wrong, Yizhen would still have to deal with those big shots and bosses in the business world in the future. It was definitely not good to really bear the reputation of a daughter suing her father. At that time, Lu Manjiang only cared about thanking Li Junxing for his reminder. However, after Li Junxing left, he suddenly came to a realization. What was going on? The agreement was clearly given to Yizhen. Why was it in Li Junxing's hands? Also, as the mayor of a city, why did Li Junxing suddenly care so much about Yizhen? He wanted to wait for Lu Zhishuan to come home at night to talk to him. As a junior about the same age as Yizhen, it was more appropriate for him to ask. Unexpectedly, Yizhen and Li Junxing came. Grandfather. Uncle Lu. Lu Manjiang looked at Li Junxing, who appeared with his granddaughter, and couldn't figure out what he meant. Xinjin, you're here. His gaze fell on the two of them holding hands. The suspicions that still existed during the day were now confirmed. Lu Manjiang's expression suddenly became very subtle. He looked at the faces of the two people, hoping that things weren't what he thought. Xinjin, you and Mayor Li, you Uncle Lu, I'm dating Xinjin. Li Junxing pinched Yizhen's palm to not make her too nervous. I'm sorry. I came and left in a hurry this morning and didn't tell you. It's my fault. He first took the responsibility on himself. Yizhen was a little moved. She glanced at Li Junxing and felt that this man was really good in every way. Wait. Lu Manjiang was old and couldn't take the stimulation. You said that you're dating Xinjin. Yes. Do you know what you're talking about? Lu Manjiang looked at him. He actually admired Li Junxing very much. He had come to the house a few times before. He did things reasonably and his words were watertight. However, Lu Manjiang never thought that one day, this person would be with his granddaughter. You're dating Xinjin? Yes. Do you know that you're Xinjin's elder? Lu Manjiang suddenly couldn't accept it. Just now, he was still calling him Uncle Lu. How did he turn around and seduce his granddaughter? Uncle Lu. Li Junxing suddenly smiled. We're not really uncle and nephew. I don't think this is a big problem. That was right, but Lu Manjiang was still unhappy. You're so much older than Xinjin. Even if we're not really uncle and nephew, it's not okay. Not much older. She's only 11 years older. Only 11 years old. How could he say that? Lu Manjiang was furious. He turned his face to look at Yizhen. Xinjin, are you really with her? Grandpa. Yizhen was confused by Lu Manjiang's reaction. She remembered that Grandpa still admired Li Junxing before. Yes, we've been together for a long time. Then, the last time you brought him back, it wasn't a coincidence, and he didn't ask you to help, right? When Li Junxing sent Yijin back last time, Yijin only said that they met by chance, and then Li Junxing helped her, so she went to help Li Junxing. She didn't expect the two of them to really be together. Lu Manjiang looked at Yijin. He couldn't believe that she was actually with Li Junxing. Do you know who he is? Do you know how old he is? Do you know what he does? You're with him. Grandpa, I've grown up. I know what I'm doing. How did you know? Lu Manjiang looked at his granddaughter and couldn't accept it. He's your uncle. Also, he's so much older than you. Grandpa. Yizhen was a little helpless. How is he my uncle? My dad doesn't have brothers. Also, it's true that he's older than me, but not by much. What's more, what does love have to do with age? Lu Manjiang was speechless. Yizhen added, didn't you admire Uncle Li before? See, you also know that you call him Uncle Li. Lu Manjiang pointed at Yizhen, the expression on his face very interesting. I admire him because he's qualified to be the mayor. But such a person isn't a suitable husband. Why isn't he suitable? Anyway, he's not suitable. Lu Manjiang admitted that Li Junxing was a qualified official, but to be a qualified husband, he felt that it was not enough. Uncle Lu, do you have some misunderstanding about me? Li Junxing spoke at the right time. Before Yizhen could speak, he pinched her palm and signaled her to stop talking. His expression was magnanimous as he looked directly at Lu Manjiang. Compared to Jinjin, there's indeed a big difference between my profession and my age. But I don't think this will affect our relationship. I'm serious about Jinjin. I've already brought her to meet my parents before. My parents like her very much. In a few days, it's a family holiday. My parents even asked me to bring Jinjin back. Uncle Lu, my father and I both respect you very much. You're a respected old professor in Qing City. I hope to receive your blessings when I'm with Jinjin. Of course, if you insist on using the secular view and your own inherent thoughts to stop us, I will only tell you that it's impossible. Because I'm serious about Jinjin. Yizhen hadn't been with Li Junxing for a long time. She had always known that he might have liked her a little. However, it was the first time he had expressed his feelings so seriously and said such words in front of her respected grandfather. She couldn't help but look at him and hold his hand tightly. Lu Manjiang looked at the two of them holding hands, and his expression became even uglier. Chapter 805. Jinjin, come here. Seeing that Yizhen didn't respond, Lu Manjiang called out again. Yizhen stood there without moving. She looked at Li Junxing, then took a step forward and looked at Lu Manjiang. Grandfather, I like Uncle Li very much. I also seriously want to date him. So I hope you won't object. Can I not object? Lu Manjiang thought of Lu Hui, and there was still sadness on his face. Back then, your mother refused to listen to me. She chose your father, and what happened in the end? You're still young. You've met too few men, and you know too few men. Jinjin, listen to grandfather. Think about it carefully. Don't be impulsive. He had already lost a daughter. This was the only bloodline left by his daughter. How could he let her suffer any more losses? How is this impulsive? I like Uncle Li, and Uncle Li likes me. Although you think he might be a little older, I really don't think it's a problem. Moreover, he wasn't much older, okay? It was only an 11-year difference. She felt that it was fine. I don't agree anyway. In Lu Manjiang's heart, his granddaughter was the best. No man in the world was worthy of her. Grandfather. Yi Zhen was anxious. She went forward to explain to Lu Manjiang. Lu Manjiang raised his hand. All right, you don't have to say anything. I won't agree anyway. Li Junxing stopped Yi Zhen from going forward. He pressed her shoulder and gave her a comforting look, signaling her to calm down. When he turned to face Lu Manjiang, he restrained his usual aura, making him look like the gentle Mayor Li on TV. Uncle Lu. I respect you very much, so I don't quite understand why you're so opposed to me being with Junjun. Junxing isn't talented, but I think I'm usually clean and upright. There's never been anything that can't be said to others. I treated Junjun with sincerity. I really can't think of any reason for you to object. Lu Manjiang didn't know what to say for a moment. He could only clear his throat and speak somewhat reluctantly. You're a politician, but Junjun is a businessman. Your status isn't worthy. What's more, don't think that I don't know that your Li family is a big family. If Junjun really gets together with you, I'm afraid the pressure will be great. So I don't agree. Uncle Lu, I've actually thought about the problems you're thinking about. Li Junxing looked at Yi Zhen. He was over 30 years old, and this was the first time in his life that he was moved. Naturally, he had already considered all aspects of the matter. If Junjun really wants to be with me, she just needs to be herself. I won't interfere in any of her affairs or decisions. As Li Junxing spoke, he held Yi Zhen's hand tightly. She can choose to continue doing business or stay in Qing City. I don't need her to do anything for me. The so-called mayor's wife is just a title for her. I won't let it bring any pressure. I want her to be happy. Yi Zhen felt a warm current in his chest, a kind of impulse. She really wanted to hug this man fiercely. But Grandpa was still there, so she could only hold his hand tightly with a faint smile. She tilted her head and looked at him intently. Lu Manjiang's expression darkened when he saw what the two of them were doing. Who doesn't know how to say sweet words? How many of them could actually do it? How many promises did Yi Nanshan make back then? Not to mention the promise, the agreement that he personally signed was still there. But what did Yi Nanshan do after that? Mayor Li, I'll be straightforward. You're indeed amazing. You're so young, yet you're already in a high position. But you're still young. If a man and a woman can stay together for a lifetime with just sweet words, then there won't be so many bitter couples in this world. Uncle Lu, what I said today isn't just what I said, but also what I think in my heart. Lu Manjiang didn't believe her at all, and he didn't want to listen anymore. Mayor Li, please go back. I'll remember your help to the Lu family. But about you and Junjun, Grandpa. Yi Zhen couldn't help but take a step forward. Grandpa, this is between Uncle Li and me. I'm an adult. I have my own judgment. Can't you trust me once? You, Grandpa. Yi Zhen knew that Grandpa was doing this for her own good. After her mother passed away, Grandpa was extremely sad. Although his care and love for her didn't decrease. She understood Grandpa's thoughts, but she didn't want to give up on Li Junxing. I like Uncle Li. I want to be with him. Even if we can't go to the end, I can have such a relationship with Uncle Li. I won't regret it. Li Junxing looked at his girl. She was brave and generous. Her eyes were magnanimous and bright. The more he looked at this little girl, the more he liked her. Xinjin's dad. Don't object. Lu Zhishuan had returned at some point in time. Looking at the three people in the living room, he expressed his attitude. I think Mayor Li and Xinjin are quite suitable. Zhishuan, what nonsense are you talking about? How is this nonsense? Lu Zhishuan looked at the two of them holding hands. Dad, they're already like this now. It's useless for you to object. Besides, don't you still have us? He stood in front of Li Junxing and looked at him with a hint of intimidation. Mayor Li's identity isn't ordinary. If he really wants to do something to let Jinjin down, isn't there still us? With me here, I'll definitely not let Mayor Li hurt Jinjin. Lu Manjiang's lips moved, and he wanted to say something. But his son's attitude was so domineering. He couldn't say the rest of his words. Mayor Li, although Jinjin isn't valued by her father, she's the treasure of our Lu family. If you do something to let Jinjin down, or dare to make Jinjin sad in the future, our Lu family will definitely not let it go. Is Mayor Li ready? Li Junxing faced Lu Zhishuan with a magnanimous expression. Don't worry, you won't have that chance. I hope so. After Lu Zhishuan finished threatening him, he thought of something else. Speaking of which, I really have something to ask Mayor Li today. In that case, why don't we sit down and talk slowly? Yijin said at the right time. Lu Zhishuan and Li Junxing looked at her together. She stuck out her tongue and smiled. What Lu Zhishuan wanted to talk about was nothing more than Yi Nanshan. He wasn't an idiot. Although Yijin only asked Lu Manjiang to come forward and carry out the agreement, he could tell something different. And he couldn't tell Lu Manjiang about this. He thought that Yijin wouldn't know, and he didn't intend to let Yijin know. If Yijin really knew that his mother's death might have something to do with his father, he would probably be even more sad. He didn't know that Yijin already knew and had some guesses. However, this was just his guess, so he wanted to tell Li Junxing first. After all, he could do more and find more connections than him. Perhaps he could find more evidence. Li Junxing and Lu Zhishuan used the excuse of discussing business to go to the study. Yijin stayed behind to chat with her grandfather. She didn't know what Lu Zhishuan wanted to talk to Li Junxing about, but she trusted her uncle. She believed that with Lu Zhishuan's personality, he wouldn't make things difficult for Li Junxing. Lu Manjiang wasn't really dissatisfied with Li Junxing. He just didn't want his daughter's only love to be with a man like this. He always felt a little unhappy. Yijin spent a lot of effort to coax Lu Manjiang. In the end, she finally made him much happier. But there was one thing. No matter what, he had to be happy. Yijin knew that she wasn't Lu Hui, and Li Junxing wouldn't be Yi Nanshan. A person who was educated by a family like the Li family wouldn't be bad. She believed in her own judgment. Yijin and Li Junxing had dinner at the Lu family's house. After Li Junxing returned home, he didn't hide anything and told Yijin about Lu Zhishuan's suspicions. I didn't expect your uncle to be such a sensitive person. I didn't expect that just asking them to sue Yi Nanshan would make him think so much. When Li Junxing spoke of Lu Zhishuan, there was obvious admiration in his eyes. Speaking of which, Lu Zhishuan was also a talented and capable person. With him around, the Lu family would definitely rise to a higher level. Uncle actually knows. Yijin didn't want her grandfather and uncle to know. But I don't have any evidence now. It's okay. I'm already looking for it. I believe there will be results soon. Li Junxing squeezed her hand. Don't worry. Now, let your father spit out the company's shares first. I'm afraid he won't agree so easily. So, we can only do it the hard way. Li Junxing looked at Yijin and didn't want her to worry too much. Don't worry, with me, your uncle, and your grandfather here. Yi Nanshan won't be able to get away with it this time. What he had to pay attention to was Yijin's safety. Lu Zhishuan and Lu Manjiang acted quickly. The two of them submitted a complaint to the court the next day. The information about Yijin and Yi Nanshan's lawsuit was still there. She gave a copy of the information to Li Junxing. When Li Junxing took the agreement and asked Lu Manjiang and his son to sue Yi Nanshan, he explained everything clearly. It was even more detailed than what Yi Zhen had given her. Yi Nanshan didn't expect the Lu family to act so quickly. Yesterday, he went to consult a lawyer. The lawyer didn't see the original text of the agreement. He just heard Yi Nanshan say that and felt that it wasn't good. He told Yi Nanshan that the agreement was really legal. If Yi Zhen really took this agreement to sue Yi Nanshan and asked him to fulfill it, Yi Nanshan couldn't do anything. The only point that could be cut in was that when the agreement was signed, it was already more than 10 years ago. If Yi Nanshan didn't want to hand over the property, it could only be said that the appreciation of the painting company in the past 10 years was not included. Then, the appreciation of the painting company in the past 10 years could continue to be divided into two. That was also one for Yi Zhen and one for him. When Yi Nanshan heard this, he didn't say anything. Chen Wanxian couldn't take it anymore. How could there be such a thing? That little B*TCH didn't do anything and gave the company to her. Dream on. Mrs. Yi, don't get agitated. Lawyer Ding knew what she was thinking. Seriously speaking, there's no other way. But there are other things we can do. What? You were judged to have been threatened. The agreement is invalid. Also, Yi Zhen was Mr. Ye's daughter, after all. She's unfilial and used public opinion to make her afraid to sue you. On the other side, Yi Nanshan was still thinking that Yi Zhen wouldn't really dare to sue him. After all, he was her biological father. But on the other side, the person who came to sue him changed from Yi Zhen to Lu Manjiang. Yi Nanshan was caught off guard. When he saw the subpoena sent by the court, he couldn't think of anything for a moment. He could only go to Lawyer Ding again. Yi Zhen was relieved when she knew that the case had been accepted. No matter how it was judged, Yi Nanshan wouldn't be able to get away with it. And she just had to wait for the result. Before that, she needed to think of a way to find out the truth behind Lu Hui's death. It was true that Yi Nanshan had a change of heart, but she absolutely believed that Lu Hui's death was an accident. With her uncle's help, Ling Xian, and Li Junxing's attention, she believed that the matter would definitely be solved. She was very busy during this period of time, and Li Junxing was also very busy during this period of time. Li Junxing was implicated in the factory explosion last time, although he was fine in the end. But for Li Junxing, it was an opportunity. Those in the dark who wanted to drag him down from his horse. He had to keep a close eye on them. Yi Zhen could feel that Li Junxing was busy, and so could she. The change of power in the painting company had passed, and the company slowly stabilized. Many of the cooperation projects had begun to negotiate again and wanted to sign a contract again. It was also at this time that the news of Yi Zhen suing her father broke out. After careful consideration, Yi Nanshan decided to guide the wind in this direction. Although Yi Zhen didn't appear, why did Lu Manjiang appear? Wasn't it because of you, Yi Zhen? Since you won't let me live well, why should I let you live well? Under Yi Ningyan and Chen Wan's repeated persuasion, Yi Nanshan agreed and dragged Yi Zhen into the water. Yi Zhen had just taken over the company not long ago. It was the time to build up his prestige, but now, he suddenly fell into such a vortex. A post appeared on the internet. It was a very popular forum in the local area. Then, the content of the post was to dig deep into the dirty affairs of a local listed company. It mentioned that a woman with the surname Y had driven her biological father out of the company for the sake of the company and the property. She had even sued her father for the property. Yi Zhen had an appointment with the boss of Tingda Company that day. Who knew that not long after they sat down, the boss of Tingda Company called to say that the other party was very busy. He was not free and would make an appointment another day. It wasn't just Tingda. The next day, when another company wanted to discuss a cooperation, they suddenly stood up. After this happened several times in a row, Yijin realized that something was wrong. Before she could ask someone to find out what was going on, Chu Te told her first. Chu Te found the post and showed it to Yijin. In a few days, the number of comments on the post had exceeded 100,000, and there were tens of thousands of shares. Almost all of them were one-sided accusations against this daughter. All of them were scolding her for being inhumane and even suing her biological father. Not only that, but the comments below were also trying to set the pace. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.